Thank you. Please be seated. Senator the Honorable Dr. Amy Brown, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, esteemed panelists, Hermat members and colleagues, specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Desmond Lawrence, your host for today's event. Today we are set to enjoy and engage in some very informative and exciting discussions centered around the theme Going Global, as Hermat presents the latest in its C-Suite discussion series. Today's accomplished panelists, all with proven track records, represent a number of industries and key sectors and will be leveraging their knowledge and experience in an effort to disaggregate the very notion of taking businesses global, from what it means to what it looks like, and quite frankly, the ins and outs of the journey. I must, of course, if you permit me, take the opportunity to highlight the role that Hermat plays in transforming the national landscape. Hermat's membership consists of some of the best and leading strategic HR minds in the region. Constant interaction and engagement with such a membership is central to our remit of being the leading voice of HR. Through astute and strategic leadership fueled by this engagement, Hermat has found its way into almost every space, every conversation related to national development. Our weekly radio program and newspaper article, more than just providing opportunities for our members to become thought leaders, have touched on significant national development touchpoints. From sustainable development to what a future world of work would look like, to diversifying into other markets and more. A cursory look at our social media platforms reveals a vibrant organization that is not tone deaf, but recognizes and understands issues in the national development and human capital development conversation. From the recognition of teachers and teaching professionals, to the need to visit all ways of compensating a modern workforce, to the importance of taking down barriers to good mental health and well-being, and so much more. Hermat's taking the lead with discussion events such as today's has yielded fruit, with members of the business sector taking note of ideas, notions, and concepts of best practice related to human capital development, to the extent that many have continued to engage and to start discussions in their own organizations as a prelude to implementation. It is therefore little wonder that Hermat is sought after for its perspective on many national issues, as is evidenced by its appearance on various media platforms. It is also little wonder that the organization has been able to develop key partnerships and MOUs with various entities in various realms, including youth development and education. So to our membership, we say thank you for continually engaging us and continue to do so. To the wider business and national community, we say that Hermat will continue to bring valuable perspectives. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is all to say that today's event is all part of a wider strategic endeavor to shape and to positively transform our country in a general sense. And we at Hermat are extremely pleased and excited that you are here to be part of this journey with us. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome to Hermat's C-Suite discussion, Going Global. So let's start the program rolling, as they say. So first up, we have our president of Hermat, a very dynamic and very astute leader. She'll be coming up to deliver her welcome remarks. Our president, Cavell Joseph Sitton-Olmer, is a globally recognized human resources executive with over 20 years of experience working to effectively balance big picture thinking and strategic planning with hands-on execution. Her passion is providing HR solutions for her colleagues and clients by helping them build their HR infrastructure through technology, compliance, and people. She's a hands-on human resources leader specializing in HR and administrative processes and systems development, organizational assessment and investigations, group facilitations, and team building for business leaders and employees. Her acumen in developing cultures of collaboration and implementing change to ensure workforce excellence is widely known in business circles in the country. So too is her advocacy work in advancing opportunities for women and girls. She has served on many boards of directors and special committees during her impressive career, In September 2021, she was elected president of the Human Resources Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago, assuming responsibility for charting the strategic direction of the association. She also sits on the board of directors of the National Training Agency and the Epoch Foundation, as well as the alumni board of the Arthur Lockjack Graduate School of Business. Ladies and gentlemen, to deliver her opening remarks, I introduce to you to the lectern, Ms. Cavell Joseph St. Omer.
Dr. the Honorable Amy Brown, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. The Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, she's on her way, but Minister of Trade and Industry. Members of HERMAT Board, distinguished C-suite panelists, HERMAT members, supporters, and friends, specially invited guests, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I know it's a rainy day, so thank you for being with us this morning. Organizations today are part of a global village with evolving technology. There's a vast paradigm shift in the way we work, interact, and how we are perceived. The current environment poses new challenges to businesses aiming to maintain and expand their operations internationally, and recent trade tensions between global powers have only added to more risk and complexity to the situation. Firms can navigate these concerns if they remain cognizant of the obstacles and opportunities they may present. It further pushes HR to now expand its horizon to acquire the best talent and to compete on the international scale. For years, HR leaders like myself and most of us in this room have worked to demonstrate that we have the skills, we have the business acumen and the unique perspective to justify a seat at the C-suite table. Having that kind of expertise and insight at this level is particularly useful for managing human resources in international business. As organizations expand globally, HR leaders must now create strategies to proactively address common challenges that would otherwise limit or delay organizational growth. 5 key areas for business leaders to consider as they work to address global HRM challenges are accelerating international expansion, technology and data analytics, recruitment and compliance, culture challenges, and last but by no means least, human resources as a strategic contributor. Today, I am certain we will touch on some of these issues and much more in an effort to offer guidance on how international and domestic organizations can manage and grow their business after the COVID-19 pandemic. When we look at accelerating international expansion, we must recognize it's a small world. The global spread of COVID-19 is just one example of how one event that sat at a single place on the eastern part of the globe ended up affecting people and organizations around the world. Many businesses can no longer assume that their operations are limited to their own country. And in most cases, this is a positive development as organizations that expand their into new markets internationally may discover new means of developing talent and discovering new suppliers and customers. Businesses are indeed poised to expand, and international growth shows tremendous opportunity. While most businesses plan to expand and take advantage of new markets, organizations are seeking specialist skills and want affordable, skilled labor. But managing human resources in international business can be complicated. So complicated that it sometimes have led to delayed or decreased organizational efforts for international growth. When we look at technology and data analytics, is your organization looking to expand internationally now? And do you have the right technology in place to support the business arms? For instance, with global HR challenges, it might be difficult to manage if organizations do not have the technology means to incorporate data into decision-making processes. If organizations were to incorporate dashboards that illustrate key performance metrics and integrated business intelligence tools that use data that sets performance insights, they will be positioned to harness data analytics to help inform the direction of their businesses in times of uncertainty. Firms must also consider the strategic needs of the business overall and then provide the tools and resources that make the most sense for employees based on their respective job function, location, and needs. Technology that is both in the reach of the employees, personalized. For example, a communications platform that can be used to provide key information specific to employees at the right time with critically important business data. Adaptable technology must be deployed when necessary, even when we consider working remotely or people with disabilities. Technology solutions can assist organizations with compliance mandates, whether by means of conforming to appropriate payroll processes or providing accurate reporting about gender, diversity, and inclusion plans. Executive leadership will need to collaborate with HR who are well-versed in these areas and much more. When we examine recruitment and compliance, businesses can grow internationally in a variety of ways, and each brings its own challenges to HR leaders. Most organizations expand their workforce by establishing regional offices that oversee operations in multiple countries, while others establish in individual countries. Some use temporary staff in international markets, while others grow through mergers and acquisitions. Global HR challenges around recruitment and compliance can manifest itself in various ways as laws, regulations differ across national jurisdictions. Again, securing talent across the globe can be an advantage, but it also requires organizations to have a clear understanding of the environment they are seeking to recruit people. So we know labor laws vary widely across jurisdictions, and significant penalties and damage to an organization's reputation can occur if laws are not followed, and we understand this. With HR in the room while strategy is being discussed, we can help you understand what mix of employees would best serve your organization's needs for the long haul. If your business is expanding into a brand new foreign market, it may be worthwhile to deploy employees from existing business units, such as expats to deploy employees. We could also look at the ultimate goal, which might be to recruit, train, and develop talent to assume the roles vacated by these expats at the end of their contract assignments. Firms can also invest in the contingent workforce, freelancers, contract staff, as part of their recruitment strategy to increase their access to talent on demand. As organizations seek to expand internationally, they must conform to a number of requirements. And to do this effectively, it will be important to understand all the nuances, including ethical considerations, so that they can participate effectively on a global stage. From a recruitment standpoint, this could also mean that talent acquisition teams include local subject matter experts who understand the nuances of how things are done in new markets as it relates to hiring talent and dealing with the legal and ethical issues. When we look at cultural challenges, developing a collaborative culture in international business setting can often be difficult. Language barriers, differences in customs, and other diversity challenges are more apparent when an organization is working with an international workforce. In addition to the processes and expectations that are familiar to one group versus another, it might be entirely different. The reality is, international expansion does not occur in a vacuum. Whether it happens as a result of a merger, an acquisition, or some other shift, moving into another market usually results in a clash of cultures, which can be a multidimensional issue. Addressing global HR challenges related to cultural differences will require a high level of coordination, communication, and understanding of the various stakeholders involved in business. So, we must consider as practitioners the cultural immersion training that is necessary for employees from a firm that was recently acquired or given an understanding of the employees, the new opportunities that it presents in a new environment while transition occurs, and in order for that transition to be successful. When we look at HR as a strategic contributor, and this is what Hermat has been advancing and really advocating for, as so articulated by our host this morning. We at Hermat want everyone to consider and understand that given the critical need to expand business and meet workforce needs, HR must play a strategic role in addressing concerns around international expansion. The function has already proven that it's up to date and it is actually up to the challenge, as HR execs worldwide have had to rewrite the playbook of best practices to help their organizations manage employees during the global health crisis. Similarly, HR execs must lead the way in addressing growth-limiting HR issues. For example, when a business is expanding into a new country, HR professionals must thoroughly understand the market before recruiting. That means taking the time to build the brand image, understand the new location, and understand the recruitment requirements, relying on local networks and advisors for direction. It is also necessary to learn and embrace different cultures and customs as they apply to the workflow and to ensure that pay equity and diversity issues, which vary from country to country, align with the business overall culture and mission. Managing HR in international business is an investment, and it is not unusual for management and headcount costs increase in the process. However, the investment will pay off as the organization culture develops and practices become standardized, resulting in a positive engagement and production metrics. As challenges occur while we address global HR issues, these matters present an opportunity for all of us as HR executives to step in and tackle them proactively by making strategic contributions with significant and lasting effects on our organizations, taking our respective organizations into the future as we focus on going global. Let's all be reminded that HR is in fact your strategic partner. It is with this in mind, I welcome you to the second edition of our C-Suite conversation, Going Global. I am certain that you will find that this edition is impactful as Hermat continues to promote the concept of a global mindset in a world where the efforts of HR practitioners will be absolutely critical in identifying the challenges and developing solutions that support effective expansion. Welcome and enjoy the second edition. Let's go global together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cavell Joseph Saint Omer. So, no discussion on going global, as it were, would be complete without a contribution from the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. The link should be obvious. And to bring the government's public policy perspective in general and the perspective of that ministry in particular, I now invite Senator, the Honorable Dr. Amy Brown, Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. Dr. Brown is a medical doctor by profession who has a distinguished life of dedicated service to Trinidad and Tobago. He was elected to the House of Representatives in 2007 as the member for Diego Martin Central and was appointed Minister of Social Development. Dr. Brown later successfully contested the seat again in May 2010, serving until 2015. He was subsequently appointed Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary to the Federative Republic of Brazil with accreditation to Argentina, Chile, Uruguay, and Paraguay. In 2020, Dr. Brown was appointed to the Senate and has since held the portfolio of Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite to the lectern Senator the Honorable Dr. Amory Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Master of Ceremonies. Ms. Cavell Joseph St. Omer, President of the Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago. My dear colleague, who I understand is almost here, the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, all distinguished members of the panel that will be addressing us this morning, and members of the board of HERMAT, specially invited guests, members of the media, friends, good morning to each and every one of you. I apologize for my voice this morning. I am not in the best of health, but I have to be in the best of spirits because the budget debate in the Senate begins shortly. And as leader of government business in the Senate, I have to be energized and ready. But I couldn't think of a better way to get into that process than to be here with you this morning. And I want to begin by saying thank you to the human resource managers and professionals of Trinidad and Tobago. I say thank you because from my perspective, former perspective as Minister of Social Development in another era, and now Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, I really see the great value that our human resource professionals bring to every single sector within the government service and within the society and economy of Trinidad and Tobago. In the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, we are heavily dependent on our HR manager and team to help us ensure that we have the best possible representatives going overseas into our 20 missions. And that requires those decisions and the shaping of those individuals, both when they leave and when they return to Trinidad and Tobago, requires a very special skill set. It's not the job for amateurs, and I recognize the value that people such as those in this room bring to our ministry, the government service, and the country of Trinidad and Tobago. I want to go a little bit further to say that HR professionals have had a very important role in shaping my own personal development, so I'm living testimony to the value that you bring. The role of diplomacy in forging and maintaining strong bonds between and among nations is indeed multifaceted and requires an approach that is general in scope as well as being very specific in focus. Today, one would frequently hear of terms such as environmental diplomacy, cultural diplomacy, and I see we have Rome here as one of the champions of cultural diplomacy, military diplomacy, very relevant in today's world, unfortunately, the diplomacy of multidimensional security, as well as our focus for today, commercial diplomacy. Now, commercial diplomacy is closely interconnected with all the other types of diplomacy which currently dominate the global discourse and landscape. It is, however, very closely connected to the more traditional types of diplomacy in its focus on economic and business linkages, platforms, and ties between and among various international actors for the mutual benefit of stakeholders in all countries. Commercial diplomacy traditionally aims to develop mutually profitable business activities between two or more countries, or among groups of countries acting in concert to establish stronger commercial bonds among themselves. I would say one example of this is CARICOM itself, and I had some discussion during the breakfast component at my table on the types of diplomacy at play and deployed within the Caribbean community. Very, very important. We've seen the recent exchanges involving stakeholders in Guyana. Everyone in this room would be familiar with past exchanges with stakeholders from Jamaica as well, and recognizing the primary importance of diplomats and diplomacy in ensuring a productive and fruitful environment is maintained between key stakeholders. Guyana and Suriname being recognized as critical for our petrochemical stakeholders, as well as other players in the Trinidad and Tobago and regional economy, and therefore maintaining an environment of harmony, productivity, and facilitation with those countries has been a primary focus of the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. You would recognize that we had two recent high-level visits to Trinidad and Tobago, and those were very strategically determined. One was a state visit by the President of Guyana, the Honorable His Excellency Irfan Ali, and the other was the Prime Minister of Jamaica. There was no accident in those selections, and the way in which we ensured we hosted our guests well, paving the way for the work that others would do in ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago's interests are always well served, as well as the wider regional interests. And I see my dear colleague has arrived. So can we welcome Minister of Trade and Industry, Paula Gopisco. So as I was saying, in this regard, commercial diplomacy has focused on business promotion and development. It aims at generating commercial gains in the form of trade and inward and outward investment by means of business and entrepreneurship promotion and facilitation activities in the host country. And I believe that Invest TT is represented in this morning's panel and will have a very valuable perspective to share. It is relevant to traditional relations between neighboring states, but all the more essential in establishing ties with countries that are geographically distant and require a very strong framework of agreements and institutional structures to help boost trade and commercial activities, generate commercial gains, and promote investment through strong business partnerships and entrepreneurship by way of facilitating business activities, symposia, trade fairs, marketing, exhibitions, and other relevant activities in various host countries, or via virtual links in lieu of the pervasive nature of today's rapidly expanding technologies. And I've seen that being applied more and more, where instead of having trade missions, physical trade missions, we're now doing virtual trade missions. And of course, there are pros and cons. And one of the pros is there would be some savings in time, there's savings in safety, and the ease of organizing such activities. But what is lost is that interpersonal face-to-face contact, which is critical. We faced these issues in the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs during the COVID-19 pandemic, where we had to rely, and to this day, to some extent, still rely on virtual interface, online diplomacy, and I have to tell you, I would prefer more of a hybrid approach, because there's something, just as we are able to experience here in this room. 1 year ago, I don't think Hermat would have been able to host such a breakfast and have such a large turnout. It may have been in contravention of our public health regulations at the time. And there would have been something missing if we had done this online. One would be the food, but the other would be for us to be able to look each other in the eye to make connections that otherwise would be more difficult. And the same applies in the world of diplomacy and in commercial diplomacy specifically. So by pursuing commercial diplomacy, governments effectively provide a very special service both to established and fledgling new companies or firms under the banner of one recognized business community whose bona fides they can verify or authenticate, creating spaces and fora where business, global ventures can be negotiated, financed, and formalized. Such is the work carried out by our embassies, high commissions, consulates, honorary consuls, and permanent missions abroad. I mentioned we have 20 of them at this time, in the context of specific multilateral interactions and regional groupings, in conjunction with trade offices and legal departments, where special negotiations are conducted in establishing trade and or commercial agreements for global partnerships. And I mentioned legal there for a specific reason. And I gave the example earlier of the value that our own human resource professionals at the ministry bring. But they also have heavy demands on their shoulders, because when you have staff operating in 20 jurisdictions across the world, and you have to also recruit staff, because we have home-based staff which we send out from Port of Spain, but in each jurisdiction we also have to recruit local staff to provide support services to the mission teams. And therefore you're dealing with we're dealing with language barriers to begin with, and the HR manager has to be able to communicate with these individuals. So already you get a sense of the expanding menu. You have to deal with labor laws in each of these 20 jurisdictions. And the labor laws just in your own country sometimes could be a little bit challenging, I'm told. And therefore imagine dealing with that in 20 jurisdictions. And then you also have to deal with a very, and it was mentioned earlier, unique cultural, economic, and human sociology environments in each of those jurisdictions. So it is a real challenge, but I wanted to flag the legal aspect as well. The representational nature of our overseas missions make them collectively a natural repository of information and logical and viable focus points for distilling the views of the wider world for the benefit of our various communities back at home, and in executing the specific policies of the government in fostering and managing an environment which is conducive for the joint development of activities by multiple actors, all in the best interest of our stakeholders. In advancing such diplomacy, the role and importance of digital transformation cannot be overstated, and it was again referenced in some of the earlier remarks. This role of digital transformation has truly grown in an exponential fashion, and particularly small states like ourselves need to invest more and more in this arena in order to keep abreast of the activities and developments taking place with new markets that are being created at this time. And I said it in that way deliberately because the government has a key role, but the private sector also has a very, very important role and can, in some arenas, further drive and spur on the government's investment and focus on digital transformation. The Trinidad and Tobago government's creation of a special ministry to promote digital transformation throughout the government sector makes us somewhat unique within our region and even in the global sphere, but is an essential part of our vision and effort to achieve this digital transformation. In like manner, our recently very successfully hosted Agri-Investment Forum and Expo provides an example of a practical space created for discussions among regional and even some international partners to focus on common challenges, to identify solutions and devise new ways and means of collaborating to address those challenges and provide practical, purposeful, and cutting-edge avenues for progress. Other traditional fora and activities that embrace the changing business environment, such as trade and investment conventions, renewed South-South partnerships, and linkages such as our own Phoenix Park Industrial Project and the Belt and Road Initiative with the government of China, serve as strong examples of positive and productive outcomes of years of multidimensional diplomacy, including commercial diplomacy. International trade and commerce continue to seek out new avenues for product innovation and new markets for both traditional goods and niche goods. And there's so many examples, such as our own high-quality chocolate production of peppers and other local vegetable products, artwork and artisanal skills, alternative energy products. Apparel is a big and growing industry of great potential to our country, alongside innovations in the application of traditional energy products and frameworks. New world-class firms have emerged in many regions of both the developing and developed world, with an aggressive attitude to promoting themselves and capturing markets that are new and some that are old. We too have that potential in this country, and we have the drive, we have the creativity, and we must work together with our HR managers and other key stakeholders to revise and rethink our strategies and to carve out new zones of engagement and new zones of prosperity for our people. One must therefore always bear in mind that economic activity is in itself diverse and applies broadly to sectors such as agriculture, tourism, travel, leisure, banking and finance, energy, sport and sports medicine, medicinal and scientific equipment, shipping and storage, light and heavy manufacturing, and others that may not immediately come to mind when we talk about this terminology, but our DJs, we have a DJ industry in this country, and I've been recognizing that more and more. Just yesterday, I went to pick up a meal at a restaurant called Kamwa, and there were two DJs there separately, one of which I knew, and one, I'm a little out of it, so I didn't know who he was, but they both introduced themselves to me and spoke about challenges they're experiencing with getting work permits to get into the U.S. market because they have gigs there. And I said, gigs? Tell me about these gigs. And it further highlighted to me that as we speak here, we have so many of our entrepreneurs and cultural artists that are really pushing the envelope, carrying the flag of Trinidad and Tobago, and this is another forum for us to carry our brand further into the world and also boost our economy and diversification efforts. They have been encountering a number of challenges which we are working to get around, to mitigate in close collaboration with the ministry, the minister responsible for culture and tourism. particularly in the North American market. So that is a work in progress. Our diplomats working in tandem are therefore being encouraged to embrace new skills and to engage more in consultation with members of our diaspora, particularly the business community and with foreign entrepreneurs and innovators, in order to facilitate the requisite people-to-people contacts and exchanges of ideas which would place our trade and commercial activity and thereby our citizenry on an increasingly stronger footing in the international arena. It's all about gaining traction and advantages for our people and our interests. To arrive at this, however, does not mean the abandonment of traditional relationships that have already been established. Good relations between our traditional international partners must always be further built upon. And it takes me back to the words of one of the founding fathers of the Caribbean community, former Prime Minister of Barbados, who said that we must, as small states, we must be friends of all, but satellites of none. That particularly applies in a very complex modern arena where we are called upon, and I remind the staff every day, we are called upon to build and maintain relationships with international partners who themselves may not be getting along on a functional level. But we are not, it would not be in our interest to import onto our shores their differences, but we have to serve as a bridge between those stakeholders. And we've been working very hard to achieve that with some degree of success. So you can name from every region of the world, Trinidad and Tobago's relations with key international partners are being strengthened at this time, and that work will continue. Always remembering to take care of home and the Caribbean community as well. And a lot of work is taking place every day to ensure that those bridges are functional, fruitful, and productive. Networking, capacity building, promotional campaigns, competitive deal making, intelligence gathering, investment campaigns, intellectual property discussions, discussions on equitable use and transfer of resources, all remain essential to commercial diplomacy. And I know I'm speaking the language of my colleague, Minister Gopi Skoon, because that is the bread and breakfast of the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the very good work being done in their sector. And I must also say that the collaboration between Foreign Affairs and Trade and Industry is at a very beautiful level and will continue to be maintained at such a level and increased. And there's some innovations being deployed at this time which will further boost our potential in the international arena to ensure that trade and commercial activity is increased in the interest of our people. The methods and methodologies will always continue to be revisited and upgraded systematically along the way as part of our multi-dimensional economic and national thrust. I know I don't have too much more time because I have to get across to the Senate early, but at the end of the day, my friends, a good commercial diplomat has to be a good diplomat fundamentally. And some of the attributes that I would want to leave you with, which apply to both spheres, would be one has to be an excellent communicator. That's non-negotiable. You also have to be an excellent collaborator. You have to understand people. So a good commercial diplomat is a pocket human psychologist as well. You have to understand your audience and you have to understand the people that you're interacting with. There should be no compromise on integrity as well, which applies to any important aspect of national life and enterprise. Integrity is tantamount. Patriotism, because as a commercial diplomat, you're also carrying the brand and the stamp of Trinidad and Tobago into every space, every conversation, every room, every arena, every negotiation. So when you drop the, if you drop the ball, you don't just drop the ball on your foot, it's on the national foot as well. So it's very important, and in some spheres, the only interaction a stakeholder abroad might have with the nation of Trinidad and Tobago is you. And therefore you carry, and I see Rome shaking his head, the only voice they may hear in their life is Rome's voice, if he's out there in wherever, Boston or somewhere. That carries a certain weight of responsibility, and we expect that a good commercial diplomat carries that responsibility well. One has to be resilient. I mentioned some of the factors earlier. One has to be versatile and flexible, and as is obvious, there would be some degree of language skill and understanding of various cultures that is essential. So my friends, I've given you some of the ideas, some of the framework. I wish I could stay for the further exchanges. I apologize to my colleague, and I'm going to be paying attention in retrospect to the panel discussion, because I think that's where a lot of the value comes in. When we have the exchange, you get some of the real-life examples from those who've been living the talk, producing results, and also producing examples, lessons, and best practices that we can all draw from. In conclusion, I started by thanking you and your sector and the value you bring, and in one of the things I'm going to be taking back to the ministry is to ensure that our own human resource professionals build linkages with HERMAT, participate actively where's Madam President, if they would be facilitated to do so, and to ensure that all of our public sector human resource managers get more and more involved with HERMAT, because I could see benefits to the association, but also I see benefits for us back in our sectors. Thank you very much. God bless you. Godspeed with your work.
Yes, a big DJ industry. Anyway, so ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, I know Dr. Brown has to leave, but we're going to invite him back on stage because we would like to present him with a token of our appreciation, and to do so would be our HERMAT's president, Cavell Joseph St. Omer. Dr. Brown, thank you very much. And if I might add, a huge DJ industry, right? So, thank you, Senator, the Honorable Dr. Amy Brown. The Ministry of Trade and Industry plays an integral role in setting a landscape and infrastructure necessary for business to diversify into other regions. So, in that vein, also to bring the public policy perspective of the government and the Ministry of Trade and Industry, I now invite Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon, Minister of Trade and Industry, to the lectern. Senator the Honorable Paula Gopi-Schoon was reappointed Minister of Trade and Industry on August 19, 2020. She's been a Member of Parliament since 2007 and previously served as Minister of Foreign Affairs. In her second term as Minister of Trade and Industry, she continues to build upon and expand programs initiated in her first term in an effort to improve the export capacity of the local manufacturing sector while simultaneously positioning Trinidad and Tobago as the business and trade hub of the Caribbean. She also continues to lead the change towards stimulating domestic and foreign investments while implementing policies to enhance the global competitiveness of Trinidad and Tobago. She believes in continuous stakeholder engagement to ensure participation in the growth and development of all sectors for a sustainable and vibrant economy. Senator Schoon's professional interests extend to the deepening of Caribbean integration, and she is committed to the notion of equal opportunities for personal growth, self-expression, and participation in the development process of Trinidad and Tobago for all citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Senator, the Honorable Paula Gopi Schoon.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And to say that Imre and I are going the same place. And therefore, whilst he starts, he's responsible for the Senate, I do have to get there in 10 minutes. So I apologize for my lateness and the fact that I must rush and be there for the start of the debate in the Senate. It's today. So please pardon the protocols, but I recognize all of the HR MAT executives that are here and the very distinguished crowd. And to say that it gives me great pleasure to present the policy perspectives of the Ministry of Trade and Industry at this second edition of HR MAT C-Suite Conversations, Going Global. Going Global is such a fitting theme for today's event because it will further discussions which were initiated at the initial C-Suite Conversations, Future of Work. In fact, today's theme reinforces what we've long known, that the future of work is about going global. And there's evident by the rapid digitization of business processes and the increasing opportunities in offshoring, nearshoring, outsourcing, and all of this has been largely driven by the fourth industrial revolution, Industry 4.0 as you know it, and further catalyzed by the recent COVID-19 pandemic and other subsequent events. As organizations transition into this new business operational landscape, the role and support of human resources practitioners become even more critical. And I must therefore commend the Human Resources Management Association of Trinidad and Tobago for hosting C-Suite Conversations, which is a very dynamic forum which facilitates dialogue among a wide spectrum of industry leaders to strategize and to gain insights on what organizations in Trinidad and Tobago require from human resource professionals to navigate this new landscape. And therefore, human resource practitioners have had to contend with shifting global trends. And these include managing new modes of work, actively looking for transferable skills such as teamwork and communication, time management, and organizational skills from new hires, and transitioning focus beyond workers' physical well-being and safety in an effort to give persons more flexibility and training and opportunities for empowerment. There is also the continued responsibility to place diversity and equity and inclusion in the spotlight to combat bias and discrimination and harassment, and to narrow the wage gap and address other workplace issues. And yours is really a tremendous responsibility, and indeed greater attention is required in these areas. But more importantly, HR managers, I'm certain, have seen the value in bringing back the human touch in the face of increasing digitization and automation. And this aims to enhance employer-employee engagement, of course, to improve customer relations and to increase workplace loyalty, especially following periods of great disruptions and disturbance, such as the pandemic and other events again. So the world of work is evolving, and the changes in demanded skills and competencies are keeping pace. And by 2030, as many as 25% more workers may need to switch occupations than before the pandemic. And this is according to the McKinsey Global Institute's report on the future of work after COVID-19. And in this regard, the government, along with the private sector, will take the lead in retooling and upskilling our human capital to keep up with these kinds of expected changes in the labor market. So that investing in our people is a critical tool to our development and one of the foremost policies of the government, as outlined in both the Roadmap to Recovery and Vision 2030's thematic area of putting people first and nurturing our greatest asset. And as such, the Ministry of Trade and Industry is focused on delivering initiatives geared towards the enhancement of our national workforce to meet the needs of the private sector and the various sectors that we must put out there. So it is imperative that HR practitioners be aware of public policy and understand the sectors that are poised for growth, both at the domestic level and at the international level, and the respective requirements of the workforce throughout various organizations in terms of skill, in terms of capacity, and of course the necessary enhancements. And indeed, the ministry is charged with the responsibility of growing trade, business, and investment, with particular focus on driving the non-energy side of the economy, including manufacturing, maritime activities, services, and the creatives. The government of Trinidad and Tobago has always valued the significant role of our local manufacturing sector and remains committed to transforming it into one that is globally competitive, productive, and innovative, utilizing advanced technologies and environmentally friendly practices, as articulated again in our Roadmap to Recovery report and our National Development Strategy and the trade policy that the Ministry of Trade and Industry follows. That this manufacturing sector remains a significant contributor to our GDP at roughly 20%, with an output of approximately $28 billion in fiscal 2022, and employing more than 52,000 persons, and that figure is growing. So therefore, understanding some of the human resource inadequacies within the sector, the government has implemented a number of measures aimed at retooling and reskilling human resource capacity of the sector. And you would know that in May of this year, the ministry, when the Honorable Prime Minister was present, we launched the apprenticeship program for the non-energy manufacturing sector, which is a 3-year program aimed at building the human resource capacity and filling the labor skills gap within the sector to drive further development, to drive innovation and competitiveness. And these 300 trainees will be trained in the areas of mechanical engineering, technology, electrical and electronics technology, mechatronics, and so on. And apprentices will also complete a 6-month on-the-job training component at an industry partner to gain practical experience, so he doesn't start off green. Again, further to that, and seeking to expand the wood sector, which is a subsector within manufacturing, we have launched the non-energy manufacturing program for the wood and wood products manufacturing subsector. And the program aims to increase and enhance the pool of human capital within this subsector by training apprentices in the areas of carpentry, woodworking, and joinery and joinery technology. Again, important if we are in fact able to grow that wood manufacturing subsector. And this 2-year program will train 50 apprentices. We will look at expanding it and repeating it again. And they will have the opportunity to do again a 6-month apprenticeship similar to the program for the non-energy manufacturing sector in actually private industry. Again, you would realize in the budget, understanding the importance and the need for experience and exposure to the world of work for our young people, the government in its fiscal 2023 package introduced a school-to-work apprenticeship program. And that is again to allow businesses to hire young persons between the ages of 16 and 25 for short-term apprenticeship. And participating businesses will be eligible for an allowance of 150% of all remuneration paid under such an allowance, up to a maximum of 5% of the company's total wages and salaries billed for a year, again introducing more persons into the world of work. Minister of Foreign Affairs would have spoken about the need to enhance our global activity. And indeed, if we are to enhance our exports, and as we again continue to build the groundwork to improve our human resource capacity, we must simultaneously do the necessary to increase our international exposure. And so, in addition to doing all of these trade missions, which we do to take our products out there, the ministry is in the process of establishing, you would have seen in newspapers, the ad in the newspapers, our commercial offices and commercial attaches in various diplomatic missions in an effort to further promote Trinidad and Tobago's export and investment profile, and again, assisting in our diversification efforts and attracting inward investment and expanding market access. So there are select countries that we've chosen for the establishment of these commercial officers and deputy commercial officers, and they are in Panama and the United Kingdom and in Miami. And of course, we would also be appointing commercial attaches in South Africa to take into account that the African region, in Guyana to deal with the south of CARICOM, and Jamaica to deal with the northern part, including the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and of course China to deal with the Asian element. So additionally, we must capitalize and expand our market access opportunities. Trinidad and Tobago, of course, has signed a number of preferential trade agreements bilaterally or through CARICOM. We do it together. These include agreements with the EU and the UK and several countries in Latin America, including Costa Rica, Colombia, Panama, Cuba, and the DR, which provide market access for our goods. And you're noticing the synergies in terms of putting out officers, establishing offices, ensuring we sign the agreements for those particular territories to bolster all of our activities going global. More recently, in pursuit of a robust trade agenda to secure new market opportunities for our non-energy sectors, we've been negotiating, of course, you've heard that before, the partial scope agreements with Chile and Curacao, so that in October, Trinidad and Tobago would have signed a general framework agreement with Chile. And a third round of negotiations is scheduled to be held in December of this year. The Chileans would be in Trinidad and Tobago, and we will be treating with matters both of energy and non-energy goods. And it is expected that in early November, I would sign the General Framework Agreement for the negotiation of a Trinidad and Tobago Curacao partial scope agreement in Curacao. The other sector that is very important, and I'll tell you why, the services sector, that's earmarked for further development and expansion. And indeed, we've been doing well. And the CSO statistics point to a contribution of 64% to GDP and an employment of 87% of the workforce. But for that same period, the exports were minimal, so accounting for only 4% of total exports. So definitely, services exports must grow. And so that you can train your thoughts there. This is a labor-intensive sector and is significantly reliant on strong human resource capacity and capability and growth, and therefore will require the upskilling of persons, and this must be fueled by the expansion of numbers, and herein lies many, many opportunities which require focus. Our trade policy, which we follow in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, identifies 8 areas of services sectors for development, and these include tourism, things like education and health and wellness services, which we can export as well, financial services, which is huge, creative industries and entertainment services, and energy services as well, professional services, information and communication technology, and maritime services. And the government, and also within the context of work being done at the level of CARICOM, has developed and implemented a wide range of policies aimed at building capacity within the subsectors which I just identified and expanding international market opportunities for our services sectors. And these government-led initiatives equip the services sector with the necessary tools to achieve strategic objectives of urgent national interest. And not only is this critical for managing rapidly changing business landscapes and labor markets, but for also boosting our presence on the global stage. Looking also at the work of the TTCSI in 2021, and they are key to growing our services sector. We are a key partner with them, and indeed they launched the Go Global TT Services, and it's a services export campaign to develop service sector businesses and professionals with the capacity to export. And the campaign encompasses several initiatives, and we are assisting during fiscal 2023 with boosting these initiatives. And this is the Services Go Global training program, which takes services exporters, through 4 stages and 12 modules of export preparation training. There's also the Gateway to Trade program, which is an export readiness incubator and training program designed to strengthen trade promotion and to foster growth in the services sector exports. So it's about capacity building for servicing SMEs in particular, including training and coaching and market sector research, export plan development, export promotion initiatives, and sector strategy development. And as of September 2022, the program has facilitated, interestingly enough, the development of 43 export plans, and I know about 120 company profiles across a wide cross-section of services subsectors, including IT and the creative and cultural industries, health and wellness, business and professional services. So they have been doing their work, TTCSI. And yes, and they have also recently launched their portal, the National Services Exporters Portal. Get your people onto that, and that provides up-to-date disaggregated services data and services as a digital space to facilitate interactions between our local services providers and potential clients globally. And that portal also delivers reliable services statistics that are necessary for development of data-driven policies, initiatives, and incentives, and so on. But I must say something about our creatives, because as part of our going global vision at the ministry, we view the creative sector as a critical sector in further driving the internationalization of locally produced goods and services. And this sector purposes as a vehicle to commercializing the talents and the creativity of our people. Lisa is right there. And to attain the immense benefits from this sector, the ministry, through umbrella agencies, has implemented a number of initiatives to enhance our creative capacity, and more specifically in the fashion sector. The Fashion Value Chain Investment Program, and Lisa will speak more about that later, I'm sure, is managed by Fashion TT, and it's geared towards improving the fashion value chain by refining the in-house performance of our local tailors and designers and fashion houses. And this program better positions our local designers to execute their respective business plans and to increase their exports and enhance their competitiveness to compete in the international marketplace. And as part of the market penetration drive, support is provided for more advanced export-ready designers to participate in virtual trade missions and engage in direct business-to-business meetings with potential buyers. And only in July of this year, and I hope you were one of the 1,000 persons who visited this virtual platform, several of our designers would have participated in their first virtual fashion trade show and exhibition to Miami. I was blown away by it. And so if you missed it, sorry. To date, as I said, more than 1,000 persons have visited this platform from various countries, including South Africa and United Kingdom, Canada, China, India, Malaysia, Japan, the Philippines, Hawaii, Nigeria, Gabon, Australia, Jamaica, Barbados, Grenada, and Guyana, so that we will in 2023 give all of the support to Fashion TT to continue this fashion value chain program. A little bit just about the maritime sector, which is it's so very important, for which I have directed that in 2023 we begin to give more attention, along with the Ministry of Works and Transport. So it's one of the sectors that we've identified to be taken globally to further engender economic growth and diversification. And this sector encompasses opportunities for coal stacking and transshipment, ship repair and dry docking, and the further development of the yachting sector, among others. And Trinidad and Tobago's ideal location below the hurricane belt, naturally sheltered, deep and calm harbor, and well-developed maritime infrastructure and industry support mechanisms and make us a prime destination for investments, plus, of course, the training at UTT's maritime sector. Again, Trinidad and Tobago, to solidify all that I've said and more, again, to make sure that our goods and services in the highly competitive international market gets out there, we must continue to reinvent ourselves based on the global climate, national policy, and needs of exporters and our investors. And so we scanned the globe, we looked internally at all of our exports and investment initiatives, and we have made a decision that we would establish this new trade and investment promotion agency aimed at transforming and increasing the competitiveness of the trade and business environment, investment environment as well of Trinidad and Tobago. This agency is expected to strengthen and modernize the country's export and investment promotion, and to raise our international profile and status. We must be stellar in the international trading community. Anticipated to be operational next year, this agency will be responsible, again, for export capacity building, export promotion of goods and services, investment promotion of goods and services, and support for the development of the domestic services sector as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, the amalgam of initiatives implemented by the government is expected to accelerate and amplify the presence of Trinidad and Tobago's professionals, our experts, our businesses on the global stage, at the same time increasing the country's GDP and revenue streams. And quite pointedly, we are all to remain laser focused, not simply just accelerating the country's growth, but ensuring as citizens that we can participate in this growth. And again, I wish to thank HR MAT for their opportunity, for giving me the opportunity to address and to share what the ministry is doing, the initiatives being pursued by the government. And I do look forward to hearing, well, I thought I would have been here to hear of the very esteemed panel, but I would recap and listen to on what was shared this morning, all of the urgent issues that are necessary for human resources practitioners to practice, and of course all of the innovative strategies that should be conceptualized, and that are the fact that you will be tackling all of these challenges as we continue to work together in empowering various sectors and industries to grow and to grow global. Thank you.
So again, we recognize that Senator, the Honorable Paula Gopiskun, has to depart for Parliament. So we're going to ask her to stay on stage as we present her a token of our appreciation. Thank you very much, Senator, the Honorable Paula Gopiskun. So, before we move on, we have a quick word from HERMAT's member of the Board of Directors and Education Officer, Kimberly Chan Buduram.
So our first sponsor for today is Caribbean Airlines, and Caribbean Airlines have partnered with HERMAT's membership to offer you 20% discount, as well as you get additional miles when you sign up as a bonus. So please feel free to visit our booth, Caribbean Airlines. So thank you very much on behalf of HERMAT for sponsoring our event. And we move on to our next sponsor. And our next sponsor is HealthNet. And be sure to click on the QR code on your table, where you will find an opportunity to earn many prizes, not only from the booths that you will see here today, and like Caribbean Airlines, who's giving you a discount, HealthNet has several discounts. In addition to, if you scan the QR code, enter to win an executive medical, you will have that opportunity. Please feel free to visit the booth as well, where they have lots of flyers and information. I know we have a lot of corporate members with us today. HealthNet is excellent for offering corporate membership, and they have long-lasting relationships. And today, I know among us in the crowd, we have their marketing officer, Zara Mohammed, who will be able to provide you with more information. And now we move over to our last sponsor that is present with us today. And we are at the PSCU Credit Union's booth. And with us today, we have a marketing team, Annette and Carice. They have partnered with Hermat on several initiatives, particularly offering our education, our PSU's education loan, offering our Hermat members the opportunity to benefit from certification, assisting with all of those loans, and they have sponsored our C-suite conversation. PSU has told me today that they have been giving lots of tokens, so feel free to visit the booth, get an opportunity to get some free tokens, scan the QR code, enter to win their hamper as well. So the team is ready and waiting for you to visit them. And now I will hand you back up to Desmond. We will return for another edition of how you can scan the QR code and get more information on additional prizes as we take another break. Thank you, Desmond.
Thank you, Kimberly. Isn't that just awesome? Let's hear it for Kimberly, yeah? So, at this time, this is where we get going with our panel discussion. So I'd like to introduce our panel and our moderator, and we're going to get things going, right? So our first panelist, ladies and gentlemen, is Franca Costello. She is the chairperson of Invest TT and First Citizens Trustee Services Limited. She's the director on the boards of First Citizens Limited and Angostura Holdings, where she brings expertise in operational negotiations with both government and private financial institutions. She's also director of Lifetime Roofing Limited. And she was, of note, she was the immediate past president of the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the board of which she sat on for 8 years, no less. And she's a widely respected thought leader and strategist, actively promoting technology as a catalyst for driving critically needed efficiencies within the manufacturing sector. She's an industry advocate, and she's vocal on all trade issues, particularly on creating a more enabling business environment that attracts investors and facilitates manufacturing export growth. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome to the panel Ms. Franca Costello. Our next panelist, Dr. Thackeray Driver, is the Chief Executive Officer of the Energy Chamber of Trinidad and Tobago. He has been in the position since 2003. Under his stewardship, the Chamber has embarked on a number of initiatives, such as its Safe to Work program and its highly touted Learning Center. He also sits on the boards of the Trinidad and Tobago Coalition of Services Industries, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, and TNT Natural Gas Liquids Limited. Dr. Driver is the immediate past chair of the Caribbean Chambers Network and was previously the chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Economic Development Board. Prior to joining the Energy Chamber, he was the coordinator of Trinidad and Tobago's Agricultural Sector Reform Program. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Thackeray Driver. Our next panelist, no stranger of course, Lisa Marie Daniel, is a change-focused executive, experienced in developing, implementing, and facilitating innovative and strategic initiatives in both startup and growth organizations. She has a strong business and finance background spanning over 15 years in experience in senior management positions in financial institutions and key state agencies in the sectors of entertainment, housing, and the creative industries. And this experience, my friends, has served her as well for her position at Fashion TT, where she's been the general manager for over 7 years. With a mandate to stimulate the business development and export activity of the fashion industry, she has been driving the sector's expansion since assuming the helm. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Lisa Marie Daniel. Oh, she's here already. Okay, good. I saw her, just kidding, right? So, our next panelist, Mr. Elson James, has over 25 years of consumer and corporate finance experience. His track record includes strategic expansion and profit creation at a number of reputable companies in Trinidad and Tobago and the wider English-speaking Caribbean. His reputation for good corporate governance extends internationally as well at a number of organizations in the United States and Asia. He has held senior management and executive positions at corporate giants such as Citibank, American Express, Ryder Systems, and Unicoma. And always a trailblazer, he's attained a number of significant accomplishments. I just want to mention just one. Among them, he was spearheading the design and creation of JMMB Express Finance. JMMB Express Finance is a subsidiary of the JMMB Group, primarily focused on unsecured lending within the region. He's currently the CEO of the company. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elson James. Our next panelist is the country manager of DHL Express Trinidad and Tobago Limited, the local arm of the Dish Post DHL Group, the world's leading mail and logistics company. She is responsible for the leadership and management of DHL Express business activities in Trinidad and Tobago. She is armed with over 18 years of experience spanning several multinational organizations in various fields: sales, marketing, business development, organizational development, entrepreneurial development, and more. And this experience has enabled Andrea Davis to develop a sound understanding of organizations from a systemic perspective, with a focus on driving performance excellence through innovative and sustainable interventions. She's also a director of the American Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Trinidad and Tobago, and sits on its Trade and Investment Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrea Davis. Our next panelist, Mr. Roger Roach, is the founder and CEO of Lazuri Apparel Limited. He is also the chairman of the Export Centers Company Limited, ECCL, and serves as a director on the board of Evolving Technologies and Enterprise Development Company Limited, ETEC, where he is also a member of its tenders, projects, oversight, and real estate asset committees. He was re-elected to the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturing Association Board of Directors in April 2020 and currently sits as the chairman of its Export Marketing Committee and vice chair of the Infrastructure and Productivity Committees. He served previously from 2013 to 2017, and during this period, he chaired the Cabinet-appointed Standing Committee on Trade and Related Matters and the Advocacy Committee. There are so many more accolades I could add to this gentleman's Bible. Ladies and gentlemen, let's bring him on stage, Mr. Roger Roach. Our next panelist, Jerome Persia, is known by most in the entertainment industry as Rome. He is president of the Trinidad and Tobago Promoters Association and the co-founder of the radio station Lit 102.3 FM. He's currently at the pinnacle of his entertainment career, and he's become a household name in Trinidad and Tobago, having his own television show across all networks. He hosts a popular radio morning show and is currently one of the country's top soca parang artists. His likeness can be seen on numerous advertising billboards throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Always eager to take on new challenges, he has managed to stamp his name regionally and internationally as an actor on an award-winning reality TV show on a U.S. television network, VH1. He recently signed on as a consultant to the London, California-based company Playmass Solutions. What you probably didn't know is prior to becoming an entertainer and entrepreneur, armed with a master's degree in engineering, he was a mechanical engineer at Petrochin. Now, I'm mentioning this because this unique blend of experiences has molded Rome into a charismatic and prolific leader in the entertainment industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Rome, or Jerome Persia, whichever you prefer. And lastly, but by no means least, our lovely moderator. You know her as well, Hema Ramkisoon. He has quite an eclectic professional background spanning communications, public relations, and marketing. While she's launched communications, marketing, and public relations programs and campaigns locally and internationally, over the past 20 years, many still know her best as the former face of the Morning Brew morning show on CNC3, one of the media entities at the Guardian Media Limited, where she rose quickly to occupy senior positions as head of broadcast and head of content. She's never one to back down from a challenge, so she left the media and she ventured in the corporate world as a marketing executive at Angostura Limited. Hema's marketing and communications knowledge and skills also saw her play a crucial role in regional sports, believe it or not. She worked for CONCACAF and she worked for FIFA. And she's currently back now from Guyana, where she played a significant role in developing Guyana's Cricket Carnival Committee and the CPL Organizing Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, our moderator today, Ms. Hema Ramkisoon.
Good morning, everyone. And I know I have the interesting task of trying to balance this very diverse panel to get all of the opinions out on this very important topic about going global. Our panel representing different spheres, different professions, and bringing a lot to the table. So, good morning again, everyone.
Good morning. Good morning.
My first question would be, we've heard so much from the ministers, we've heard from the president of HUMAT. What exactly does going global represent to you? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it mean? Mr. Driver, maybe we can start with you.
Okay, well, I think that the context for Trinidad and Tobago is that we have to diversify our exports. That's the first place I think we have to start from. We've had our exports have been very dominated by a handful of commodities over time, and that's something which we have to change, and so we have to diversify. And there are a huge number of different things which we can diversify into. And I think that's where taking Trinidad global comes in, because you have to have this big range of different products and services. Crucially, I think services are incredibly important for how we have to try to diversify our exports. But that is done not by countries, not by sectors, but by companies. So you have to have companies who are in a position where they can sell goods and services into the international market. So then we have to internationalize our companies, and that means that our companies have to put in place all the procedures and the systems to be able to do that. And that's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of work involved in that. And obviously HR plays an absolutely crucial role in how you structure that. And that's sort of the building block that you need in order to be able to take our companies global.
Ms. Costello, you represent so many companies, and like the rest of our panelists, your profile is so wide. What does going global look like from where you sit?
Not in an attempt not to be too repetitive on a lot of what has been discussed already, recognizing that we all know that going global means taking our brand externally outside of Trinidad and Tobago, reflecting on what that means from an HR perspective and also in these times of uncertainty and volatility. What we do know now is that the economic downturn that we experienced in 2020 came at us 6 times faster than it did in the 2008-2009 downturn. And what analysts have discovered in companies that have been able to show resilience is that they predominantly had 3 main attributes. One was they improved their margins. Second, they had revenue growth. And the third is they invested in optionality, a term that is not widely used, but I think is very critical. And the last 2 are very obvious for going global: increasing revenue growth and improving optionality. And this is going global. How do we translate that now into an HR perspective? Going global with revenue growth and increasing optionality means that we have to review our cultures, our current culture, our culture here, and the culture of that country and market that we want to go into. And I believe that that is where this discussion will take us, because going global is not just simply about putting your products out there, but how do we put our products out there? And that how is the people aspect, how the people are the activists for that.
Mr. James, let me ask you the same thing. You are in the financial sector. When we talk about finance, it's easy to say we can see how finance is going global. But from a company that has established itself, roots in Jamaica, links from Jamaica, establishing itself here, what does going global truly mean to you?
No, thanks, Emma. Morning, everyone. And again, touching on the same things, going global means us going out to the world. But it's also reverse. It's the world coming into us. We now have competitors coming in, because it's not just us sitting here saying we want to be global. The globe wants to expand its reach. So you have competitors coming in, but there's also opportunity where you now have access to services and products that you traditionally didn't have access to 10 years ago. So you can set up a business with some of the leading organizations globally at costs that are significantly less than if you were to develop it in-house. So it allows you to expand globally, but it also allows you to access systems, networks, companies outside to help grow your business locally.
Mr. Daniel, we know the fashion industry is booming. We just had Paris Fashion Week. I know Kanye West created quite a stir there, but beyond that, what exactly are local designers to them? What is it going global?
I
think, Hema, and thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to say that, going global is really three-pronged. It's business capacity building. You need to be able to know how to run your business efficiently. You need to build yourself from the ground up in order to go local. Further to that, you need to be able to market and promote in a digital way, in a modern way, in terms of how we're seeing the world is going right now. And thirdly, I always say that we need to work with each other within the system. We need to build a viable ecosystem for our companies. So in addition to everything that they've learned, and in addition to all the marketing and promotion, they're able to be sustainable. So we talk about, and I'll probably elaborate later on, but I'm sitting now next to GMMB, who's going to support us with fashion. I'm sitting now next to DHL, who's supporting us with fashion, ECCL. We're talking about all these things that we're doing. We're trying to build a sustainable ecosystem for companies, so after they've learned all they've learned, and they market themselves outside, they can continue to do business and continue to move upward. Yeah.
Mr. Rich, looking at your company, you've had a lot of success. Going global from where you sit as an entrepreneur and a business owner, what does it mean?
Well, thank you very much. For me, first of all, it's a shift in the mindset that says, number one, we are good enough as a people, and that has to do with our services. And two, that our products are good enough to go global. We are special, we are unique, and we have something to offer. And we have to see the world as our marketplace and stop thinking and playing small. Going global means to me that if I am in Europe, if I'm in Africa, if I'm in Panama or South America or anywhere, that I can go into a store, go into a supermarket, go into a bar, and find something that is made in Trinidad and Tobago that I can buy, that I can consume, or that I can buy as a gift to give someone else. And with the technology that's available to us now, there's really no reason why our products and services cannot be marketed abroad. The Minister of Trade listed out a slew of incentives and services, and we really look forward to the development of these commercial offices in the markets that were mentioned that will serve as a catalyst to assist companies in marketing their products on the ground in the markets that we are targeting.
David, you sit in a very unique position because you're country manager of a group that is truly global. Mm-hmm. So explain it on the two-prong approach for me. What does going global look like? And when you also look at the Trinidad and Tobago services, can they be on that level? Because you've seen it from a local industry as now you also sit as part of an international group.
Yes, so thank you, Hema, and good day. So Roger sort of summed it up for me, which is what I usually describe going global as, seeing the world as your marketplace. However, it's a bit more than that, because it is looking at, moving into different geographies or building a multi-country organization from a systemic and a strategic perspective. Systemic meaning that you look at expanding, but aligning all your systems, your processes, aligning your human capital, developing your human capital, to go out there and not just have a presence in a global space, but to be sustainable. And apart from being sustainable, to build resilience. Going global has a lot of benefits. And I would say that the benefits outweigh the risk, but there's also a lot of risk that organizations and persons that want to go global has to be mindful of. So I think that it is about strategy. It's about having the right priorities. And it is about looking at the world as a marketplace.
Sure. Now, I know that we'll get into the risks, but Ms. Priscilla, we've heard from some of the ministers about the gigs that DJs get out there, but also the entertainment industry. You're an example of one with your alignment with many international organizations. I want to ask it in two ways. Are you an anomaly, and what does it look like for the industry?
So thank you very much, Hema, and good morning, everyone. Let me start with your first part of the question. Am I an anomaly? When I appeared on VH1, it was surreal because I grew up listening to Chili from TLC and Lil Kim, and I was on a TV show with them, and I was like, is this real? I'm this little Trini boy from Arima on this big stage. And then I remember We had Anya Yongchi as well, who was also on that global stage. So as much as it may seem as though it's just a few of us who has done it, there is so much potential for us out there as entertainers, as creatives. So I don't think I'm an anomaly, but I think as though we limit ourselves, as what Roger and some of the other guys were saying, where we put ourselves in this box thinking that we could only make it this far in terms of our careers or what we could achieve, and we hit our own glass ceilings. But it's time for us to start thinking much bigger and looking at the world as our playground versus just Trinidad and Tobago.
Now, I know I want to ask some more pointed questions to each of our panelists, but because I'm going to pick up on that point. So you talk about yourself, and then we've recently had Marshall Montano having sold out arenas in the US, celebrating his 40th year. Again, we have success stories that we can look at. You identified mindset. Is that the biggest challenge you think facing the entertainment industry?
I think it's definitely one of the biggest challenges we have, because we think very small as a people. We think, especially in our entertainment field, we think as though, okay, soca is probably one of the biggest genres that we have here, and everyone who wants to become the biggest soca artist here in Trinidad and Tobago. But I remember someone saying, there's no sense being a big fish in a small pond. It's time for us to think bigger than that and going out into that big pond. So for us, in terms of thinking global in the entertainment industry, it's twofold for us, because we want to tap into Trinidad and Tobago's greatest resource, which some people may argue our greatest resource as a country is oil and gas, but I beg to differ. I think our greatest resource is the human resource. We as a people, we are very, very creative. And when you look at the twofold approach that we are looking at is exporting our human resource in terms of our creativity, because as you all have been seeing, we have been duplicating our carnival throughout the world. Trinidad and Tobago's carnival is in all the other islands. It's in Europe. We had Notting Hill Carnival with 2.2 million people on the road. We have Caribana. So it's exporting our carnival, exporting our creatives, and creating jobs for our creatives globally, and then also importing people to come and see not only our carnival, but our culture and our entertainment in terms of using our creativity and our human resource as a tourism earner, as an income generator in terms of foreign exchange.
Now, I do want to tag this question on to Lisa Marie Daniel, because I'm looking at the creative sectors and also in that particular. So Jerome spoke about mindset. When we look at fashion TT has had success. We've seen some of our designers making it to New York. What do you think is that the gap that exists, or why have we not seen our designers going big in all of these international fashion shows?
You know, it's one thing in terms of wanting to attend a fashion show and take pictures and, you know, have your pieces on your runway, but it's really another thing afterwards to ensure that your return on investment in terms of going to that show and your accommodation and airfare and all these things are covered by the money that you make. So essentially, it's not that you make a loss, right? Because over the years, we have basically our designers attended many shows, but they haven't really made the money in terms of getting buyers and getting those pieces into big boutiques and department stores. And I think, you know, what has really been the barrier to that has been the issue of manufacturing over the last 7 years. What I'm happy to say is that in partnership with the University of Trinidad and Tobago, we have recently launched a local production facility named Made 868. It opened in January this year, and we are servicing the industry in terms of all the needs, even in terms of jewelry making. So I would say that, you know, that was a barrier. I think as well as other barriers in terms of financing. But all these things, we're putting the plug in. And I'm happy to say that out of all the hard work in terms of the state and fashion TT, this year we launched our first global program.
Well, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Now, I know that, Mr. James, you spoke about the benefits of companies when you look at the global landscape, looking at Trinidad and Tobago. And I want to bring Ms. Costello in to pick up on that point, and then we'll return to you. When we talk about going global, a lot of companies also look to Trinidad and Tobago in their global expansion. What exactly are investors looking for, looking at, and what are the selling points that, where you sit as InvestTT, what do you say to them?
Such a great question. And, you know, it ties in very nicely with the discussion here, because when I came into InvestTT as the chair and I met some of the foreign investors that were coming in, there was a repeated line of our value in Trinidad. And they said the number one reason why the foreign investors come to Trinidad is because of our people. Because of the hiring capacity that we have in Trinidad. Not only in the volume of employment numbers, of number of persons that are employable, meaning age and health, but also the diversity of skills, how well spoken we are, and how well educated we are, not just in high school level, secondary level, and tertiary level, and so on, but in fine specific skills in different industries. And that reinforced the sentiment that, as a proud Trinidadian, I've always had, that our people are our biggest asset, and that we do need to treat our talent as carefully as we do treat our capital. And that's an important strategic decision that we must always have when we're developing our learning and our training tools in our businesses and informing strategy for going global. Our culture is highly exportable. Carnival is highly exportable. We are truly blessed with a great employment foundation. The other thing that foreign investors are looking for would be accessibility to that workforce, so our infrastructure, not just through road and transportation, but also through internet, because work from home is a reality today as well. And of course, they're looking for, the tax benefits, the subsidies, the SEZ legislations, and all of that as well goes in nicely together. But the number one thing that they look for is employability.
Mr. James, in terms of the financial sector, picking up on that point from Ms. Costello, you spoke about what investors are looking to. When people are coming to say, I want to invest in Trinidad and Tobago, from a financial perspective, why do they want to come here?
No, I think we all touched on it, and it sounds like a repetitive story, but it is the people. When I think we all know Trinidadians that are working and living outside of Trinidad, and they're all being leaders in their various spheres. I have a really good friend of mine who works at IBM and is a lead programmer for that global company. And when we all go out, we realize when we are living out there and we're studying out there, we realize, wait a minute, I know people much better than who's here. And yeah, I'm good, but they have 1 million people back home better than me. And the international markets recognize that. So when they come, they realize that there's a skill set that's here, there's a knowledge that's here, there's a confidence, there's a way that we carry ourselves as well that's attractive and happy. And all of that augurs well for global expansion, so that you can come in, work with a Trinidadian, work with a Tobagonian, and then take that person and export them out, because you know that what they've learned here and the culture that they've been inculcated can be used globally. So you find them in Japan, you find them in Europe, you find them across the globe, simply because of that same ability to expand.
The ability to expand and adapt. I think no other sector has had the success rate as the energy sector in the exporting of skills. You can find a Trini energy worker in Azerbaijan, in Qatar, everywhere in the world. Dr. Driver, when you talk about the social barriers or the cultural barriers, I think the energy sector is a real success story. If you had to give advice to the HR practitioners here, what would you say to them? What is that key that allows Trinidad and Tobago professionals to truly adapt and thrive in these industries?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that, in the energy sector in Trinidad, we have global companies here in the country. And in order to be able to work for one of those global companies in Trinidad, it's the same things that you need to be able to work for that company in Azerbaijan. So, and also tend to sell them services. So the ecosystem, which we've heard a bit this morning, of services around those industries. If I saw Kenson's name up here as one of the sponsors. So to Kenson to sell services to EOG Resources in Trinidad, it's the same standard and quality to sell them those services in the US. So we've already got people who are used to offering services at that level. So in terms of advice to the HR profession, I'm not sure if I'm really the right person to give them advice. They probably can give me advice. But I would say that there are a couple of key items which people really look for in that global industry. There's the obvious things around ethics and integrity, and adhering to your ethical code of conduct, which I think there's a really important thing, and sometimes we forget how important that is for companies, and they have to be able to show that. And there's a big emphasis on that within those global companies, because they will get in a lot of trouble and they get fined. It can be a huge issue for them globally. And then the next one is safety. You know, health and safety is just a huge issues in that industry. And actually, we've got a, in the Trinidad's energy industry, we've got a pretty good health and safety record. I mean, it is by no means perfect at all, and there's a lot of things you have to keep a constant focus on it and constantly improving and continuous improvement. And the last thing you can ever do is be complacent, because when you're complacent is when you get into trouble. But that focus in that area, I think, is really important. So I would encourage HR professionals to think about those issues. There's two things there. One is that real emphasis on ethics and compliance with ethical code of conduct. And when you sign the ethical code of conduct, it isn't just you're signing because you have to sign, but you actually read it, understand it, go back to it, remind yourself of it. And health and safety, just keep that focus there. And the HR profession should be at the forefront of that, of those two areas.
Some advice there. And I do want to bring Ms. Davis into the conversation. And I'm asking from the perspective, as country manager, I don't want to get the term wrong, but I know Cavell wrote it in her article, but there is a bias to, when you're in a country, to find that balance with the locals versus the international workforce. Sometimes that quest for that balance can result in sacrificing skills or being unfairly uncompetitive to one group to the other. How do you find the balance?
So THL is unique in how it is set up and structured. We operate in 220 countries and territories, and as you can imagine, every single one has a different culture, but we have built a global culture. And what I would say is that not just HR leaders, but leaders on the whole need to enable and accelerate the development of human capacity, human capital. And in doing so, they have to look at, they have to see your human capital, your people, as not just workers, but also as capital assets of the company. And once you do that and you have that as a bottom line, your human capital should be a bottom line in your company. They drive everything that happens. In terms of balancing, the local with the international, etc., it's about developing the capacity. So I would have had employees here that now works with our regional office. I have employees here that provide services to several global offices. And that is because we were able to develop that capacity that allows persons to work across geographies, to work across different borders. So I think what we need to do as leaders and as HR practitioners is to develop the capacity of our people.
Now, Mr. Rich, when you did your opening statement, you spoke about products and services available globally. We have examples of products, Trinidad and Tobago products, Angostura, you also have SM Jaleel. I remember the first time I saw a chubby in South Africa, I was blown away. But these stories are, I don't want to say few and far apart because I don't want to seem like a pessimist, because we have services and we have HR persons, we also have people skills that are being exported, but actually manufacturing and products. What is the biggest challenge in having more success stories?
That's a very good question. So let me start by saying that in some
If you
case,
say finance, I'll bring JMLP into the conversation.
No, it's actually not that. One of the biggest barriers to more products not being exported outside of Trinidad and Tobago and sometimes outside of CARICOM is the leader of the company themselves getting very comfortable in their market. The market is big enough for people to earn a comfortable income, to become millionaires, and therefore there is no trust really to move beyond those borders. the companies that have done extremely well is really, if you trace it back, you trace it back to the leader, the vision of the leader, and that these leaders wanted to build a large, sustainable business that would be around for generations. I think that's number one. Number two, in some cases, and this goes back to Andrea's point, sometimes we try to go and then we hit barriers. And when people hit barriers, they tend to retreat. And that resilience sometimes comes from crises. So for example, I can give you my own example. We started a manufacturing business in 2020, just before the COVID pandemic. And it's a manufacturing business that's in the garment industry. And when we were starting that business, a lot of people said the garment industry is dead in Trinidad and Tobago. You can't manufacture garments and make money. And today, we are exporting 50% of our capacity. And by January, we'll become a net US earner of foreign exchange. And one of the reasons for that is that we have gone on every trade mission that was available, whether it's Export TT, whether it's TTMA. We went out there and looked for business. And sometimes we just have to go out there and look for the business. So when the minister comes here and says, I'm setting up commercial offices in Africa, I'm going Africa. When she says I'm going Panama, I'm going Panama. When she says I'm going Chile, I'm going Chile. And that is what businesses have to do. Follow the missions, follow where we have bilateral agreements, and really push the envelope out there. So let me give you a challenge. One of the biggest challenges to garment manufacturing is the availability of labor. So we can sell any amount of goods that we can produce. But there's no mechanism to train labor in this industry in Trinidad and Tobago. So the barrier for us is not capital, it's not the availability of sewing machines. You can buy thousands of sewing machines from anywhere in the world. But we need to create an industry that is highly labor intensive, that could sap up a lot of labor, and we could export these products globally, right? So I just gave you my own example,
Right.
and to let you know that sometimes it's just the mindset that we want to get our products abroad, and we just need to go for it in some cases.
Now, because you brought up the point of labor, I am going to ask Ms. Costello to give us her perspective on that, sitting. And you sit on a number of not only boards, but also you are heavily involved in a manufacturing business of which you have an integral stake in. So tell me about the labor market in Trinidad and Tobago.
Listening to Roger, I'm getting very excited and enthusiastic. There's just so many things that I want to talk about and share on this topic. And when I was at TTMA as the president, we developed the TTMA export strategy, which then the Minister Gopi Schoon appended to the National Manufacturing Strategy with the goal of doubling exports from 2020 to 2025. So companies like Rogers are an ideal target because SMEs are our future. Just as we say children are our future, SMEs are our future. And I firmly believe that, and they grow. Janora's is a well-known, established uniform company and has tenure across Roger. However, Roger has he has what I call the optionality of an entrepreneur, where an entrepreneur has that almost childish free will to go out there and take the risks that are needed. And what Roger spoke about in going out there and looking for markets and exploring new markets, that is increasing his optionality. He's spreading his risks. That's what he's looking for. And when it comes to translation of labor and what it looks like, yes, you must assess what that labor is like in these different areas. So, I spoke with Professor Sterling Frost, who, in my opinion, is a change management expert and a leader in the HR field. He is the Deputy CEO at FCB, and I talked to him about this discussion today, and he said, tell them don't depend on HR to take you globally. HR has to support you, but don't depend on it. You have to assess the different fields. You have to assess where you are. You have to look at your bench strength. You have to develop that with the training programs. And that is why government policy is being informed by private sector pushes. And we're seeing a whole coming together of public and private sector, listening to one another, being all inclusive of strategy, because we must grow together. If one is leaving the other behind, we're going to fight one another on it. And there's a joining of private and public sector right now that's happening. And even in this last budget reading, you saw there was an acknowledgement in the EY report in particular that said, we as the business sector recognize that the government has laid a lot for the business sector to take up for opportunities. So the minister spoke about the apprenticeship program. 5% of your annual wage bill being paid, 150% allowance. It's an amazing for Roger to now pick up, to train his people, develop that labor pool. The labor pool is there, but they're just not trained in the capacity that he needs them to be. So he's going to do that now so that he could go to Africa and pick up the Curacao Trade Mission and create that optionality of the different labor elements, the different markets that he's going to be able to go into. Transporting, exporting our culture, like Rumi had talked about, going away with those options. That is where we are at when we're talking about going globally.
Ms. James, let me bring you into the conversation, only because finance always gets a bad, they get some bad, they do, because entrepreneurs come and say, I go to the bank, I have this idea, no one wants to finance it. I need to have the money to get the money, to back the money for money that I want to borrow. And I'm not putting you in the hot seat to answer for the entire financial sector.
But is he feeling hot doing
Yeah. So, but, what is the financial sector doing to assist those in the fashion industry, to assist those in the creative industry? And I saw Jerome sit up because I'm going to ask him next about that.
Yeah.
I'm listening carefully.
Yeah. For real, it's wrong. So it's a real question. And I think as I sit, I'm representing finance, representing the financial institutions. I think there's more that we can do. But I also think that there's more that the entrepreneur can do. Because you pointed it out, right? Where you see an entrepreneur comes to a bank and said, hey, I have an idea, I'd like you to finance it. And to be fair, I don't think that there's any bank in the world that you can just go and say, hey, I have an idea, I want you to finance it. No bank is going to finance it anyway. It doesn't matter if it's Trinidad, the US, Asia. No bank finances an idea. You come with a structure, you come with a process. So for me, it's on the finance side, it's on the banking side. We do have a responsibility, and we are working, for example, Lisa and I spoke just last week in providing coaching and training for the SMEs to say, hey, listen, when you approach a bank, these are the things that the banks are going to ask for. And if you do have it, and it is in place, bet your bottom dollar, you'll get a loan, because banks are in the business to provide loans. We're not in the business to keep the money. We are there to provide loans. So a Roger approaches, listen to the difference. I'm in this market already. I'm doing this. I'd like to expand. That's a very different conversation to, I have an idea that I'd like you to finance. So it is that combination of, yes, the financial institutions providing an understanding to the SMEs, what you should be doing, but it's also the responsibility of changing that mindset of saying, what is it that I need to do in order to be prepared to get financing to go global?
Jerome, I think you wanted to add something to that, because the entertainment industry, it's so intangible, but yet you see the tangible results. I asked you if you're an anomaly, and you said no. So tell me about the younger generation, those who are coming up. What you spoke about mindset, but are they getting their dreams financed? Do they know how to do it?
So one of the things that breaks my heart, right? I see it all the time. Every year I see it and it breaks my heart, is when I have to see a big entertainer or creative having to come to beg the public for help for their health reasons. They have to raise funds for a barbecue or for whatever to do it. And why it breaks my heart is because I see this year after year after year, and I look back and I say, why is this happening? And I think what is the main reason behind all of this is that our young ones coming into the music industry or into the creative industry, they are just that. They are just creative, but a lot of them don't know the business when it comes to being a creative. So if you're a musician, you have to understand the business of music. Yeah, you may be talented to sing a song, but you need an entire support team behind you in order to make it not only globally, but right here locally. There are contracts that need to be put in place. There's like a full team of people that you need around. You need to have a lawyer on board. You need to have the proper manager on board, a booking agent, all of these different people in terms of the human resource that makes up you as a creative. And what a lot of the creatives don't understand is that you are the CEO of your own company. So Rome is a brand. Rome is a business. And Rome has to have all of these different employees that work with me in order to help me to succeed. So I may have a Soca Parang hit this year, but let's look at next 20 years. Is it still going to be relevant? Am I still going to be benefiting from my music? Do I only master rights to my music? All of these things need to be put in place, royalties, publishing rights. And this is something that lacks in our entertainment industry and our creative industry as a whole. And I think that's where I would challenge some of the HR professionals, is that we venture into looking at supporting our creative industry with the proper human resources that are needed in order for us to go global. When we look at big artists out there, they are signed to big record labels. And that record label is a huge company that supports these artists financially and with the human resources that they need. But we try to make it on our own. We try to send out an artist out there or a designer out there or somebody out there and expect them to compete globally with people who have an entire backing of millions of US dollars and hundreds of people behind them backing them. And we can't do this thing alone. And that's why we need an entire industry to develop, where we could support the artists and support the creatives, not only with the people resource, but also with the finances. Because it is difficult for an artist to get out there globally. They need to spend in terms of marketing. They need to spend in terms of production or a designer. They need to get that back in to get on that platform. And I know how the banks would think, because I went there with one of my first businesses. I had a pizzeria called Quick Slice Pizza on Arpita Avenue. I'm not sure if you all ever had it. It's the best tasting pizza in the world. And I remember going to a bank to ask for financing to start.
It was not GMMB, right?
No, it wasn't
Good.
GMMB.
Just
It wasn't GMMB. And they basically said that it is too risky to support a small business like this, because they gave me the quote of, what's the quote that you all have? 90% of small businesses fail.
But
and
not
then
quote, the fact. The fact that 90%
right. The fact is that 90% of small businesses fail, and then out of that next percent, 90% of those going to fail. So it was too risky for them as a bank. A bank is not going to lend you money and then have to catch the tail to come and get it back from you. They would invest in you if the reward exceeds the risk. And it is very risky as an entrepreneur. Me, myself, I'm an entrepreneur, and I know it is very, very risky business, but there needs to be some avenue to be able to support the creative sector, even though it's a risky business. And I know there's NEDCO, and there are some other areas, but we're just looking for a little bit more support. And not only support financially, I would challenge the banks with this, is that if you're supporting the sector, try to help the artists to develop a team and a business plan. I know as well, NEDCO, I would mention them again because they try to do that as well. So if an entertainer or creative comes for a loan and you just say, well, here's what, we have this thing set up where we have a program for young entrepreneurs or young creatives to go through, and you go through this course, you get the training that you would need, we provide you that support, and now after we realize you have a whole system in place, now we can give you the financial backing to go ahead and represent Trinidad and Tobago on a world stage.
Now, you know, on that, a little chair there for the advocacy part. You know, on the issue of that team and the backing and the support, Dr. Driver, I want to bring you in your capacity with the Energy Chamber. I think when we look at the success stories, and I think Ms. Costello mentioned the SMEs, there are many SMEs in the energy services sectors that truly are competing on a global level. They've gone out there, they work for governments, work in Ghana, they work all over the African continent. Tell us a little bit about the structure at the Energy Chamber, which allows or sort of opens the doorway or assists hand-holding in getting the success stories to be as numerous as they are.
Well, the first thing I would say is I don't think we're as successful as we should be. I think we have a few people who have been successful and have been out there. Clearly we've got lots of individual Trinidadians
Yes.
who are out there working for the global companies. We don't have enough local companies out there in the market. So I think the first thing to say is we should in absolutely no way feel that we've achieved very much and feel any way complacent, because there's a huge opportunity which we have, and I think that we need to start from saying we haven't really done a quarter of what we should have done.
Why haven't we made that three-quarter then?
Well,
Let me rephrase it.
And it's not easy. Okay, it's not that this is an easy thing to do. There are finance issues as well. Financing equipment, which you need equipment to offer services usually, and it's financing specialist equipment in a market like Trinidad is very difficult because they can't collateralize that equipment because they don't know if they can, if it's a market, if they have to foreclose on it. So the financing thing, then just getting into the international markets, it's an expensive place to move things from Trinidad. It's not easy shipping things out of here. So those are sort of constraints that people have had to deal with. But we do have success stories, and the success stories, and we have tried to help those success stories. We have about 60 companies in the chamber who are exporting into international markets. And those are companies which will go up head to head against global giants. They won't always win, but they will sometimes win because they're still in business and they've had to be able to win to do that. So I think that what the Chamber's role has been in that area is we've been helping our member companies meet what the requirements are internationally. So I talked about safety, so that's a big part of it. So meeting the health, safety, environmental management requirements of the international customers, you've got to prove that you can do that. You've got to prove that you have a workforce who is certified to the international standards. Trinidad has done a really good job at training its labor force. We've put a lot of work into that area over the years. A lot of investment has gone in from the government and from companies into getting people trained. There's more we could do to certify individual workers, I think, within the Caribbean, particularly with the Caribbean vocational qualifications. So those are all things that I think need to be added into the mix. What the Chamber's done is we've helped our companies meet those requirements in Trinidad, and then we've taken companies out. I've been on trade missions to Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Uganda, Cuba, Brazil, Colombia, Suriname, just numerous times, Guyana numerous times, taking our companies with us and helping them get into those markets, advising them on how they need to network. We have international companies coming into Trinidad for our energy conference, which is a good event, and it's a time for people to meet each other, and just really helping our companies know what they have to do to be able to do business with international customers, and making the networking links for service companies. It's not about you can't send a container across of samples and try on a market. You've got to have people going into the market, making the connections, promoting the company, meeting one-to-one with the procurement managers and the operations managers of those customers, because it's a business-to-business relationship, not a consumer relationship.
Yes.
So those are some of the things that we've done from the Chamber's point of view, but we could do so much more.
Ms. Costello, the investments, when Dr. Driver talks about the success stories, and we look externally, let me ask, are investors coming to Trinidad?
Yes, absolutely. So obviously, COVID had a huge impact on our investment values. Our strongest year from going back to 2016 would have been 2018, when we had $895 million of investments recorded in Trinidad. And then that dropped significantly in 2019, and then even worse in 2020. It went to 1.8 million. But 2021 had a bounce up, back up to 278 million, so showing a return to the pre-pandemic levels. And the target for 2022 was to close at 270 million. That was the target. And, it was a bit of a nerve-wracking period because you weren't too sure where we were going to go with it. Our lead generation was strong, but I am very proud to let you know that we closed at 468 million.
Wow.
And, 25% of that value was foreign investors, which is awesome. 70% just over 75% being the local investors, which I think is incredible. But what's important to recognize, and we track the number of jobs generated, was that 2,200 jobs, new jobs were generated out of these investments, and that 75% of those jobs generated were from foreign investors. And that is important to recognize, that not only are foreign investors bringing new jobs to Trinidad through coming here, but they're going to be trained at international levels. They're going to be trained to operate on a global front, because the majority of those are BPOs, business process outsourcing. And a lot of them are our youth. They're from 25 to 30 age group. And they're working in very diverse backgrounds, such as work from home and so on as well. So yes, investments are happening, local and foreign, and we're hoping to see, I don't want to preempt myself, but I love a target, so we're hoping to double down on those numbers as well going forward. And we do believe that we have a very inclusive strategy. We have, a minister spoke about TIPA coming on board, but it's going to be combining the export, invest TT, and also creative TT. So I'm listening to the conversation, and I'm seeing an agenda and a joint strategy, which is just going to add tremendous strength to the conversation, pushing us all forward together to be inclusive.
Now, looking at the success stories, Ms. Daniel, let me ask you, Mr. Roach mentioned he's going out there. He has that, that dream that we all hear about. The entrepreneurs must have that spirit, and they just go and they go. Do these trade missions benefit the fashion industry? Do they benefit the fashion industry? So when Mr. Roach spoke about the trade missions that he would go on and that he would always be a part of, but he would go to find the opportunities. Do you think the creative sector and the fashion industry, are they represented? Do they create the opportunities for your sector to go global?
Yeah.
Yeah?
We do, most definitely, most definitely. And what I was saying in the beginning in terms of Fashion TT, basically launching our global campaign, what we are doing from this year within our global campaign is essentially executing virtual trade missions, a combination of virtual and physical. I mean, this year we could have only done virtual because of different reasons, but we basically launched a virtual trade mission, and as Minister indicated, we basically hosted a fully immersive trade exhibition site with each of our top local designers having their own booth, showcasing their products, and showcasing exactly what the pricing is and how to contact them, etc. So they can most definitely benefit from trade missions. We've seen it. But what we have done over the last 7 years coming up into this year is really build the foundation in terms of the fact that if it is we carry out a virtual trade mission to meet buyers, you need to know what to prepare for, and you need to have the capital to fulfill orders. So very much so. And I just want to go back in terms of success stories. I want to say, and as Rome has mentioned, there really should be an entity to support creatives in terms of business capacity building and hold their hands in terms of mentorship and training and understanding how to interact with a bank. Fashion TT does that.
Okay.
Fashion TT works with 170 plus designers annually. So it's not only the 11 at the top that we're promoting export-wise, but we have a 3-tier program right underneath, which is tailored based on their business developmental stage. So it's not one basket fits all, it's that this is your problem, this is how we're gonna help you. So we've met with other institutions throughout the islands, and they said, oh my gosh, we really want to have a structure like that in place. Over the last 7 years, based on the work we've done, I'm pleased to say with the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York, even with UE now, we have designers who are increasing their revenues annually by 135%. And some of them are only exporting, So
that's pretty impressive.
So how you said 90% of small businesses fail? I beg to differ. Joking, at least not for fashion, right?
For Mr. James, we're putting him on the spot for the entire financial sector.
You're getting licked, James.
That's all right, we're going to do.
Ms. Davis, I want to ask you, when we look at the global supply chain issue and the competitiveness on truly going global, because where you sit looking at investors going in, investors coming out, the movement of goods and services, has it created a problem that is still existing for us? Have we been able to overcome that problem?
So What I would say is the pandemic, while it may have seemed to be something negative, it did have a positive impact on trade to an extent. And I think it would have shifted how we view trade, as opposed to, we cannot get from one country to the next, borders are closed. But then it drove the emergence of new technologies. And, e-commerce evolved. And as Lisa was saying, we work with Lisa and they closely, and we have been able to, grow a number of designers and so on, because they now ship abroad. We have a number of local businesses right here. During the pandemic, during that period, while their business here would have stopped, they moved their business to online.
Okay.
And I think it comes with, and everyone spoke about being able to facilitate that. DHL, we have created a program called Go Trade, where we support countries. We also support the, companies within these countries, SMEs in particular, and we've done that across the world, from Rwanda right back. And we have helped these persons, get past red tapes. When you're going into a new territory, a new country, there are certain red tapes.
Yeah.
There are certain things that you must know. And that program allows us to work with these SMEs, work with the countries to understand what is required. So I think while there may have been some impact from, the past 2 years, from the pandemic, I think there was a lot of opportunity coming out of it. And it was really for, organizations to recognize that the opportunity is there. And there's a different way of doing things now.
There's a different way, and I know before we are going to open the floor for questions, I do want to ask Mr. Roach one question from a manufacturing perspective and also an exporter perspective. The whole world is changing, and businesses are being judged very differently now. CSR, ESGs, they are now, I don't even want to say they're fad words, they're actually the business realities of what businesses are judged by. When you are going for an international partner, when you're also entering new territories, they look at your carbon footprint, they look at your consciousness, they measure businesses in very different metrics than we are accustomed to in Trinidad and Tobago. How are we preparing the manufacturing sector for that? I don't want you to answer for the entire manufacturing sector, but as a manufacturer yourself, is that something that we are preparing for?
Fortunately for Trinidad and Tobago, we are one of the better countries in terms of labor. For example, we don't have child labor.
Right.
We don't have situations where the roof of a plant is falling down on its workers. We don't have the kind of exploitation you see in some of the other major manufacturing countries. So, for example, there was a time when we used to do some manufacturing for an international brand in Trinidad called Van Heusen. We did do some manufacturing for them. And when they did the corporate social test on our facility, it was in the 90th percentile.
Okay.
The only issue we had was that there was no recycling industry for the cutoffs that we were emanating from the plant. And we actually found a way to solve that problem by selling our cutoffs to other smaller entrepreneurs who would like to make children's clothing and all those things.
Okay.
So whereas we are mass manufacturing, there's somebody else who's using what we call our waste and putting it to good use. I want to go back to the question you asked Andrea, if I may do a plug for TSTT and small businesses. TSTT launched Parlor
yes.
in August. And there was great fanfare and then it dipped. That is a fantastic opportunity on an e-commerce platform for SMEs. Number one, TSTT is a huge company. They have the marketing capability to market the platform. And with marketplaces, the more buyers and sellers meet on the platform, the more successful the platform is going to be. So I'm the chairman of export centers, and export centers deal with developing the craft sector in Trinidad and Tobago. And we were able to put 20 of our best craft entrepreneurs on the Parlor. And we're working now in the next quarter to put 100 craft entrepreneurs on the Parlor. And as TSCT adds more sellers onto the Parlor, and starts marketing this parlor in the diaspora, whether it's New York, London, Canada, all these places, it means that I can sit in the UK, want to get something indigenous from Trinidad and Tobago, go online, swipe my credit card, purchase it, DHL picks it up, ships it to the UK, and I have something indigenous from my home country that I can wear, utilize in my home, or give as a gift. And someone sitting in their house, somewhere in Tobago, in Point Fortin, somewhere, has earned US dollars into their bank account.
Sure.
And Fashion TT could capitalize on that. A lot of SMEs could capitalize on that.
I know the platform, and I do encourage that endorsement as well. So what we're going to do at this time is our floor is open. I know we have a very diverse panel. If you have a question directed to a specific panelist, please indicate your name and who the question is directed to. If it's a general comment, feedback, we will also encourage. So the floor is open. You have about 20 minutes. And also, because we're against time, we're trying to make sure that we entertain as many questions as we can. So I know sometimes we can be a little long because Trinis are very expressive. Try to make your questions or deliver in a succinct manner, please. Don't all jump at the same time. It also means when the panel does a really good job of getting all the points across.
I actually have a question for our panelists. Because I've been hearing in terms of the export that, and you mentioned it before with Andrea, with the supply chain, in terms of how has COVID and the war affected, and not only Andrea, but I think Roger and they could tap in on this, how has the war and the pandemic affected the cost of importation and getting goods to Trinidad and Tobago?
So I would go first. The war, we expected that it would have had a greater effect, but it has been contained to some extent. So in terms of goods getting to Trinidad and Tobago, there's a number of routes. So the network can use different routes. And I guess it's because of where the war is taking place. So it hasn't significantly impacted it. What impacted the cost of goods and services was more or less the pandemic. Because during the pandemic, apart from the issues with container shipping, what we would have seen is an increase in freight prices due to charges, these emergency surcharges that was brought in by countries such as China, etc. But I think that, or I suspect that come the end of this year, we should see some sort of reverse in some of those charges. And as well as container prices have been dropping significantly, right? So I think that there's no major impact right now in terms of supply chain from a cost perspective.
Any other panelists would like to weigh in on that?
I would have to, in my industry is metal and steel industry, and metal and steel is highly affected by oil and gas prices. And it's had a huge impact. This year alone, we've had up to anywhere between 4 to 6 price increases for steel and metal, which then affects the price of construction. And when construction is low, a lot of things get affected because of labor and so on. How much labor is used in construction? So it had a whole spiral effect. Supply of raw materials was also affected by a delay of 3 times as long. So if something used to take a month, it can take anywhere between 3 to 6 months now to get in. Suppliers were also shut down. And so you had a reduction in options of different suppliers to in raw material. I know Ukraine also greatly affected, the war in Ukraine greatly affected the supply of food because they were a major supplier on the wheat market. So they had a huge impact there. But I agree that the pandemic had the effect on the freight rates. But Ukraine's war had an effect on the oil and gas, which Dax could then comment on.
Well, I mean, okay. Well, I mean, it's obviously meant that you've had this big increase in energy prices, of which Trinidadian business is insulated against because electricity prices come from natural gas, which is being sold in Trinidad to T&Tech at an extremely low rate. and it's capped through a contract, so we have not been exposed to that increase. Obviously, the exporters of those commodities would rather be exporting that natural gas than selling it to tea and tech. So there's a massive opportunity which Trinidad has about being more energy efficient. So I think on the ESG question,
Yes.
on the social side and the governance side, I think Trinidad is really well. We have very clear, very strong labour market regulations in place and minimum wages and a good safety culture. On the environment, generally, I think on sort of local environmental impacts from industry, I think people are conscious of that. We have the EMA in place around water pollution rules, but in terms of energy usage and our greenhouse gas emissions, we are really bad.
Yeah.
Trinidad is really, it has a very bad per capita emissions. We're very energy inefficient. It creates a massive opportunity for the service industry to be able to help manufacturers reduce their energy use. There's not a big push because prices are so cheap, but as electricity prices go up, which is going to happen sometime over the next few years, as we've seen with transport prices, transport fuels going up, that creates opportunity for the service industry to help manufacturers and other users of energy reduce their overall electricity consumption or their gas consumption, which will help them with their carbon footprint. Those questions about carbon footprint are being asked of suppliers to the local energy industry. So people who are supplying
I did want to ask, when you talk about the carbon footprint and particularly the energy industry going global, that is, I know, a question that is emerging as being part of in legislation.
Yeah, it's going to be a major issue for our exports of our commodities from Trinidad and Tobago into key markets, particularly into Europe. The carbon footprint of our petrochemicals is a major issue which the country has to deal with, and everyone knows it. It's not really being discussed at that level. We will lose competitiveness because countries are going to start paying what they call a carbon border tax. So the amount of your tariff that you pay when you're selling product into a market will depend on the carbon intensity of that product. So if we can't bring that down, then you're not going to be as competitive. But we can bring it down. Trinidad has massive opportunities in that area, so it actually is a huge business opportunity. So I'm very confident about it because we can do it. But we can't just pretend it's not going to happen. It's going to happen. We've got to be conscious about that.
Being optimistic there, and our floor is still open. Roxanne, I think you have a question.
Hi, morning, everyone. A question for the creative industry. I'll direct this to you, Rome. I'm looking at the impact of copyrights and copywriting, and from the perspective of going global. I take you back to an instance where an international star mounted a brand by the name of Juve, an alcohol. That was Michael B. Jordan. And we as Trinis, we have this way where we feel we own words. Now, I know that Juve has its French connotation and derivatives from the French language. So it's a word that had existed from, however. But because of the onslaught that he received, he backed out, I think, of that deal.
He did.
Now, I take you back to, for instance, Beyoncé and her husband copywriting their daughter's name. I guess it's for development of a brand that will come. That's Blue Ivy. I didn't see the world erupting into how could they take the word blue, or furthermore, how could they take the word ivy? But I think because of a savvy international market, they understood that they're just branding, but everyone has use of the words. So in terms of sensitizing a very touchy Trinidad public, Rome, how would you approach dealing with that issue?
That is very, very touchy and sensitive because the world throws around the phrase called cultural appropriation.
Correct.
And on that very specific topic, I knew that created a big, big uproar in TNT because they felt as though a non-Trini was using a word that we would own. Juve would be something that we all affiliate with Trinidad and Tobago. In that case, I don't know the full details, but I heard that he partnered with a Trinidad and Tobago national who was his business partner to do it. Now, on both ends of it, it was that One would say that that's actually great because he's putting Juve out there and being recognized, and it would actually help Trinidad and Tobago. And the other side of it was that he's not a Trini, so he should not be allowed to use it. And that would be something, would always be a debate. And can we own these these words, these phrases? That would be something for the Ministry of Culture to kind of look into in terms of if we could copyright some of those things in terms of Trinidad and Tobago's brand. But I was happy to see that we would get international recognition, that somebody would want to come and use Juve or to use any part of our culture on a world stage. We saw Trinidad James, he has sneakers that he would use part of Trinidad and Tobago's culture to promote his sneaker brand. And I guess Trinis would be more open to something like that because he would say, well, he's a Trini, so he could do it, and we would allow him to do it. But we have this mentality that anybody who is not a Trini, you're not allowed to use anything that belongs to Trinidad and Tobago. And I think we could probably be a bit more open-minded with that and partner with international companies and celebrities where we could get our name out there instead of trying to just keep it to ourselves, and we could allow partnerships to occur where we could get our brands out there. And that case was very, very unfortunate because it was basically Twitter fingers that caused that. It was.
Do you think we lost an opportunity?
I did. I think we did. I think we did lose an opportunity there with that. And with many other things, I think we're quick to shut down things that could take us on different platforms.
Well, emotions sometimes get the best of most of us. I know there's another question.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Ronaldo Thomas. I'm a UE student, and I don't have a question, but rather a comment for Ms. Franca Castillo. You made a statement that we can't depend on HR practitioners to go global from Professor Frost.
To take us global.
To take us global from Professor Frost, and I agree with that because I believe that HR is no longer constricted to a department, and now where the functions are spread out to other managers and line managers. So I believe if we are looking to go global, it is required that not HR managers, but managers, line managers and supervisors take the initiative to carry us there. So that was just the comment I had to make.
And that's a part of the whole transformation that we're seeing, where we're flattening structures and going to more holistic, where it's an experience as opposed to a dictation of instruction, right? So excellent.
Thank you. I think we have another question.
Good morning, everyone. Just like Ronaldo, I'm a student at University of the West Indies, third year. It was wonderful listening to all of the discussions, and I'm privileged to have the opportunity to be here. However, I do recognize it's a privilege. There are a few of us university students here, and even outside of the university, we have secondary school children, high school. They need to figure out what they want to do next, career-wise, even academia-wise, and all of the wonderful information that you are sharing here today is not necessarily very accessible to them, especially depending on the schools that they go to, the area that they live in. And you all have wonderful companies, and you have been parts of wonderful organizations. What initiatives do you have, and this is for anybody, or outreach do you have to get to these young people? Because most of you spoke about that talent and that drive really coming from the 25 to 30 age group, but that kind of drive is fostered from a much, much younger age. So what initiatives do you have to get into the young people at that age and really encourage them and let them know what's out there? Because it's been my experience that many of them, especially depending on their schools, don't know what is out there for them.
Sure. Thank you so much. The floor is open.
Well, I'd say we partner with this organization called the Heroes Foundation, who is a great organization which is across schools throughout the country. And every year in this very room, in fact, we have hundreds of secondary school young people who will come here to our energy conference and will get to meet the leaders of the energy industry to discuss these sort of issues. And Heroes Foundation also does what they call the mentoring between sort of young professionals and students at school. The pandemic made that more difficult. They managed to do quite a lot of stuff online. It's a great organization, and something I'd encourage people to work with. Anybody here, Heroes Foundation is something which I'd highly recommend, and so that's what we do. But I would make one comment though, that people like me in our 50s are probably the worst people to advise young people about what the next opportunities are, because we just don't know, because everything's changing so quickly that I think you're probably better off asking somebody of your age to tell a 15-year-old what the opportunities are than asking somebody of me in my 50s, because we're past it.
Anyone else would like that?
I'm not in my 50s.
I would add to what she said, and it's true. I think it does lack in a lot of the industries and in the school system itself. Now, I know some schools do it, and I must plug my alma mater, St. Mary's College, for doing it, because what they do, is that they have something of like a career day, where they would invite past St. Mary's College students to come back and speak to these students to kind of give them an idea, guidance of what opportunities there are out there in terms of a career. And why I would say that is beneficial is because I have a nephew now who, he just finished secondary school, he went to Hillview, and he's a bit confused as to what to do next, as to what to get into. And I'm telling him, well, go and do some research. But it's not only that, is that if we had things in the school systems in place where we have people in our positions who go back to the schools and just give the students an idea of what we do or what these jobs entail, we'll be able to kind of guide them or encourage them in various fields. Because for me personally, if I was given the opportunity to go to the schools and speak, I'll be able to tell people that there are many jobs in the creative sector that they can do. And I think because Trinidad and Tobago comes from a very traditional society where everyone wants their child to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or a pilot, they don't get to see these other opportunities. You could be a graphic artist, a designer, you could be into manufacturing. There are so many different things, but everyone, how many doctors are we going to have out there? How many lawyers and how many pilots? We need to have that human resource to develop those other industries. Even the farming industry, you could make a lot of money from these things. And I think these kids just need to hear from people who have succeeded in these industries, go back and talk to them and be like, yo, I was a mechanical engineer and I sing in Parang and making more money singing Parang than an engineer. So I think they need to kind of hear some of these success stories to kind of motivate them that you don't have to stick with the mold that our parents would have instilled in us. Because it's not their fault, that's what they probably were taught growing up as well.
Well, I know you share your success story quite often, so a lot more Parang singers will come out of that for sure. We are at the end of our, I think we have one quick question, if you have it quickly.
Hi, you hear me well, right?
Yeah.
I am a third-year student at USC. When you said you have to think outside of the box and not just limit yourself, right? Is it that you set certain goals that, hey, I'm going to reach this? Or is it like you went, like, kind of a go with the flow, knowing that I wanted to get to this point? So it's directed to anyone because you all are successful in your own rights. Sure. So is it that you wanted to reach there and you just went for it, or you had like short-term goals, long-term goals as to get in there?
Thank you so much. Quickly, anyone from the panel? I know we are fighting time.
I mean, so I can speak for me. From that perspective, I think I had short-term goals and long-term goals. But where I thought I would have been, I'm nowhere there. So it's going back again to the mindset that you start off on your journey and have an open mind to understand that the universe can guide you. And once you have that open mind, don't be closed to what it is. So as Roman's pointed out, he's a mechanical engineer. I'm sure when he was in UE, the last thing he was thinking about was singing Parang. I used to work at a corporate company and saw an opportunity for consumer finance. And I actually went to GMMB and said, hey, I know you have a banking license. I think we can do this and make money. And they agreed, and we started a partnership to start GMMB Express Finance. More than anything else, it's that mindset to say, listen, whatever you want to do, a bank can't tell you no, a bank can't make you fail, your parents can't make you fail. That drive and mindset to say, hey, this is what I want to do, I'm heading down this journey, and however the doors open, I'm going to walk in and have my head on my shoulders.
And I want to endorse that point as well, just to give the young lady some hope. I remember walking into FIFA, and I didn't even know how many players on a football team. But I knew that I was going to make sure and do the best that I could do in this job. And I learned everything I could about football and communications in 4 years, and it was the best 4 years of my life. So whatever comes your way, just say yes and do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, that's a really true story. And the same thing with cricket as well. But I did it, and you excel at whatever you do. Whatever you want to succeed in, you will. I know we have a question.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Victoria Smith, and I'm from the University of the Southern Caribbean. My question is directed at Lisa and Roger. I am currently really interested in modeling and fashion designing, right? So what inspiration or what information could be presented to somebody at my age in terms of going into that field?
I think she wanted to enter fashion fashion and modeling.
Yes.
Yeah, she just wants to
Lisa.
fashion and modeling.
What's the opportunity?
Yeah.
Well, there is the Trinidad and Tobago Modeling Association. In terms of, you know, they provide training opportunities and webinar opportunities for models. They also open doors for models to basically perform in local fashion shows and regional and international shows. I think though, but what you can do is just feel free to route your request through us. Email us at info@fashiontt.gov.tt. I know it's long. You can meet me after. I'll put it on your phone, and we will basically refer you to the requisite people who will support you in your modeling career, your aspiring modeling career.
Thank you. And in terms of the fashion designing aspect, if you want to go into that as well, because I really enjoy like sewing and all that stuff.
In terms of education and that kind of
She wants to get into
she wants to get into the
industry. I think the thing is that getting into fashion design in particular, you should contact the University of Trinidad and Tobago. So the University of Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean arm of fashion design, basically deals with all the technical aspects of fashion. You know, from basically your sketches to the production of samples, the manufacturing, all of the conceptualization. So they've been doing a really good job. And every year they have an enrollment of about 16 to 20 fashion designers basically going into the industry. So what I would want to say as well is that also coming out of the University of Trinidad and Tobago, out of the BFA program, we also hear a lot of criticism in terms of the designers not knowing exactly where to go next. There's no industry to go in for fashion. Fashion doesn't have a market here. And I have to say I disagree tremendously. It's just that persons do not know the opportunities available. So follow your dreams. Get into modeling if that's what you want to do. Get into fashion design if that is what you want to do. You have the backing here, right? You just need to pull on the resources, email us, email UTT, and you will essentially find out all you need to know, and you will be equipped with the tools to do so.
Yep.
Yeah?
Thank you so much. So as we wrap this panel, I'll give each of our panelists 1 minute closing comments. This is about going global. We'll start with you, Dr. Driver.
Well, I think it's just to put that point, just do it. I mean, I think people, you know, in organizations just need to have the mindset. You have global customers in Trinidad, so if you're selling to them, there's no reason why you can't sell to the same customers outside. But I think what I'd emphasize for people in the HR profession is you've got to support the organization in getting ready to do that. So many of us have been working remotely. We know how to work remotely now. So then you've put the management structures you've put in place to manage a remote workforce in Trinidad. Well, you can use those same structures to manage your workforce wherever they are. So, you know, I don't think there's too much magic in this thing. You just got to go ahead and do it.
Go ahead and do it. Ms. Costello?
My message would be companies, small, medium, and large, need to look up and look outwards. Look to see what your options are on a global perspective. Create a strategy that is all-inclusive to encompass your cultural, use your culture as your secret sauce, your secret recipe for invoking change and creating that value add. And stop with the short gap type of strategies that are defensive on just managing day-to-day crises, and create a long-term strategy that is more incumbent. Take advantage of some of the framework that the government is laying out there. Be proactive about your choices and make quick decisions. Ensure that your decision cycles are shortened, because in today's world of volatility, you have to be on the ball and be able to grab opportunities quickly and know when to drop them as well.
Thanks. I think the theme of the Dame Raps is of going global. You have to go global. As an entrepreneur, you can't stay here and go global. You have to get out there, get to the markets, and that may be physically in a plane. Caribbean Airlines is here. Or it may be, expanding your reach and network in education. It's amazing the type of courses and degrees that you can get from right here in Trinidad across the globe. So to reach out, expand yourself, and as Dax was saying as well, just do it. Don't shorten yourself. And just a quick tag on what Rome was saying. GMMB Rome is going to commit to providing education. We're doing it with Lisa and the team. We'll do it as well with yours. We'll commit to educating the artists to understand what's needed so that we can partner to go forward.
Lisa, your closing comments.
My mantra has always been, who dares wins. Don't wait. When you get an opportunity in hand, don't wait until you're absolutely ready, because you'll never get an opportunity again. If you get an opportunity, you make it work. If that is your dream, you make it work. And, I have to say, when we were talking about life, my background is in business and finance. So I've worked in the bank for the majority of my working life. Elson would know that. And then I went across to NLCB as their CFO. So my background was business and finance. I applied to Creative TT because it was exciting for me. I loved fashion. So when I got in, people were like, who's this girl? Does she know anything in fashion? Then I had to say, well, listen, my role is to basically mentor and train in business and to facilitate a sustainable business environment here for fashion designers. Not to compete with fashion designers, not to sew, not to understand these things, but to basically enable and foster a business environment. And fashion has always been my dream, and I'm living my dream. And how it is I'm doing it? I'm merging my expertise in business and fashion. What I'd also want to say is that there are tools available. So when you leap into that opportunity, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to email an institution and the government to see exactly what tools are available. If we can't do it for you, we will refer you to somebody who will. Sure. So the sky's the limit. Live your dreams. Don't be afraid. Ask for help and move forward.
Mr. Roach?
I think we have an individual and collective responsibility. I think Trinidad and Tobago needs a national, encompassing, made in Trinidad and Tobago strategy. And we need to pull together the relevant agencies and target the industries that we want to grow, to market these industries abroad. Yes, entrepreneurs like myself and others can go out there with the correct background and education and so on and get business. But there are industries that need assistance, whether it is financial, educational, promotional assistance. And we have the agencies in Trinidad and Tobago to assist, but sometimes these agencies are disjointed. And if we have a national strategy, for example, Made in China is a brand name. So Made in Trinidad and Tobago could be a brand name that we utilize to promote whether it's the creative industry, the services sector, and other sectors that are poised for growth abroad, and we can take as much people with us. They say when you want to go fast, you go alone. But when you want to go far, we all need to move together.
I like that saying.
That's it.
Ms. Davis.
Yeah, what I would say is don't set limits. We oftentimes set these goals and we make these goals, there's a limit, there's a boundary. Don't set limits. I have a good friend that's here today, and I've taken a quote from her, and she always says, do it afraid. Yeah? So we don't set limits. Secondly, when we talk about going global, we need to look beyond what we knew from the past. There's a lot of ways to go global that won't cost you a fortune, where you don't need a significant amount of capital. Aside from that, we also need to look beyond what we know as the norm. Oftentimes we think of going global, we look at the US and we look at the region, we look at the Caribbean. But what about emerging economies, the Philippines, India? We have Vietnam, and there's a number of them that's actually emerging and growing, and there's so much opportunities. What I would say is research. Do a lot of research beyond, beyond the norm. If you know that you want to expand into 10 countries, research the countries, understand what it takes to get there. And of course, don't allow roadblocks to stop you. A lot of people stop when there's a roadblock. I've had customers right here in Trinidad that would say, well, you know what, I'm trying to ship these tea to India. We know India, China, tea is a big thing. They're trying to ship tea to India. And, in their mind, it's like, this can never happen. But I can share some stories with you about persons in Africa making boxes and making, glitter and selling these things globally and making millions of dollars. So don't limit yourself in terms of what you think you can because you don't have the capital or the financing. Get information, and you can start somewhere.
Yeah, the final comment.
I've taken pieces from everyone, and I think it's the same message that we all sending is that let's not limit ourselves to here in Trinidad and Tobago. And yes, it's easy for us to say that we want to get that support because in terms of the creative sector, we would need more support from the government and from the private sector to help to develop it. But I always put the onus on the individual. You yourselves out there, think big. Think the world is your playground, not just Trinidad and Tobago. And a couple of people mentioned it in terms of the research that has been done. Whatever you're thinking of, chances are somebody else has done something very similar before worldwide. Right now we have the internet as a resource where you could just type up something and you could find it. I could bet you there's a book on something that you're thinking of that could guide you. For those in the creative sector, there's a book called All You Need to Know About the Music Business. That will guide you on everything you need. As the book name says, everything from contracts to managers to everything. And I'm sure there are artists out there who don't know it exists. But I found it by just Googling book on the music business. When I started my pizza business, my mother would tell you, all the boy know how to do is fry egg. But I had a pizza business because I bought every single book there was on running a restaurant or on pizza. I can tell you as well, there are conventions for almost anything you can think of, and I'm sure they know it as well. I went to a pizza convention in Las Vegas. You would think, a pizza convention? So think of whatever you are interested in, Google it, look for a convention in it, or a training course. When I wanted to be a television announcer, I looked for television announcer courses, and I went to Los Angeles, and I was trained to be a television announcer. So even if we may not have the resources right here in Trinidad and Tobago, because there are a lot, but if we don't, the world is there. Jump on a Caribbean Airlines flight, save your money, and go to a course, buy the book, and do some research on your own instead of waiting on somebody else to come and do it for you and to help you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we've come to the end, so Desmond's coming up.
Okay, so don't go just yet. At this junction, I'm going to call on Hermat's President, Cavell Joseph St. Omer, because we'd like to present some tokens to each of the panelists as you're getting ready, as you're walking off. Yeah, so we just, expedite in that sense. And they'll be ably assisted by our two PR committee members, Elizabeth and Walsher. Need to know where to stand for the pictures, yes? All right. Dr. Thackeray Driver, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, my pleasure. Thank you.
Miss Franca Costello, thank you very much.
Thank you.
very much.
Mr. Elson James, thank you.
Thank you very much. Elson, exactly. Thank you very much.
Miss Lisa Marie Daniel, thank you very much. Thank you, Cavell. At this juncture, I'll call on Hermat's Vice President, Miss Laura Quentrell Thomas. He's stretching there, boy. Right. Mr. Roger Roach. Thank you very much, sir. Miss Andrea Davis. Mr. Jerome Presea.
Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, didn't she do a wonderful job today, didn't you think?
Thank you.
Ima Ramkisoon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For supporting us.
Thank you very much, Laura. So at this juncture, I would like to turn you over to our Hermat's board member and education officer, Miss Kimberly Buduram, Miss Kimberly Chan Buduram. Kimberly? So we need to be focusing on the screens again. Oh, okay, no problem. Just a few seconds.
Go ahead. Okay, so welcome back. And I know you must be so busy listening to the panel, but I want to direct you to take an opportunity to look at your phones because you might just be the winner of one of our many prizes. So let me allow you to take a minute, check your phone to see if you're a winner, and you can make your way to this area to collect your prizes. And while you check your phones, I will also go through the winners here.
We have a winner, man, yes.
So one of our first winners, a hamper donated by Associated Brands Industries, Michelle Dunn of the Unit Trust Corporation. So congratulations, Michelle. Our second hamper from Associated Brands Industries, Kashka Andrews from Udicott. Congratulations, Kashka. On our other sponsor, Lucent Research Prize, you will get one free consultation from Lucent Research Limited, as well as one free focus group on any area of your choice related to your organization. And that goes to another very lucky Udicott representative, Joel Reyes. So congratulations, Joel. Our next prize is from HealthNet Caribbean. As the winner of a free executive medical, you are now entitled to a host of blood and urine tests with a doctor examination and dental checkup. This allows you a complete head-to-toe medical evaluation so that you can get the facts and better take care of yourself, because I know HR has been having this conversation about health and wellness. And the winner is Colleen Cox from NGC. So congratulations, Colleen. As we get down into more of the very many prizes that you've had the opportunity to enter for at Hermat's second C-Suite Conversation Going Global, is one of our partners or one of our sponsors who shared the name similar to the title, Global Financial Brokers. And their prize for our corporate member is a lunch and learn session dedicated to any 3 specific steps of the 7 steps of financial wellness. So I've heard many persons ask about financial advice, and a 1.5-hour session, no more than 20 attendees per session, conducted virtually or face-to-face as we resume to the post-pandemic era. And the winner is Rachel Henry, Commercial Protected Services Limited. So congratulations, Rachel, to you and your organization. As we go down again, Global Financial Brokers, they are offering a second prize, this time to an individual, the same lunch and learn session dedicated to any 3 specific steps of the 7 steps of financial wellness. And this prize was won by Brianna Ford of UE, one of our students who is with us today. So congratulations, Brianna. And our final prize by PSCU Credit Union, a hamper, a hamper which has PSU tokens and some other very nice goodies, goes to one of our very supportive sponsors and media partner, Carrie-Ann Hepburn Malcolm, Guardian Media Limited. So congratulations, Carrie-Ann. And on behalf of HERMAT, congratulations to all of our winners. Please come to the back, receive your prizes, and take some photos with us. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Kimberly. So you see, right, you're not just coming here to learn and educate yourself and develop and all of that. You're winning things too, right? I noticed I didn't win anything, but all right, that's another story and tell. We'll talk about that after cover, right? All right, so I would like to move on very quickly. So HERMAT is having our Legacy Awards Gala dinner and ceremony in November. It promises to be something that's very exciting. I'm going to invite our board of directors, a member of our board of directors and our treasurer, Ms. Antonia Ferry, who's going to tell you a lot more about it. Very exciting stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Antonia.
Good day, everyone. I always seem to have the pleasure of having 5 minutes to tell you what I need to say. That's 20 minutes of talking 5 minutes. So today I have technology in my favor, and that lovely QR code on your phone, if you use it, it's going to give you all the details of our Legacy Awards, and including the ability to complete your nomination and also to purchase tickets immediately for our gala dinner and award ceremony. But, you know, we still have to tell you a little bit about it. So I'll hand you over back to the screen so you'll see a little promo about the event.
HERMAT, or Human Resource Management Association of Trinidad, began officially in 1990. We began meeting, a group of us, in 1989. The group would have been Gordon Draper, Maxine Barnett, Lisa James, Corinne Jones, and myself, Glenn Wilson. To facilitate the professional development of its members, to develop and ensure appropriate standards of excellence, to foster the acceptance and recognition of HR management, to provide the impetus for research into issues affecting human resource management. So those were the broad objectives that we had, and they came out of our assessment of what was happening in HR at the time.
After the start of HERMAT back in late 1989, in early 1990, there was a move to, in a sense, capture the image and the brand in an iconic logo that would represent the organization. Now, I am nowhere close to being an artist, but I thought I would throw my hat in the ring and do some creative stuff around it, and working really at 2 levels. One, that the logo ought to say that it is HERMAT's logo, and 2, that it should have some other kinds of lessons in there. The T and the T, those two figures that look humanoid on either side, which are the T and the T, really represent, you'll notice that they're coming from different directions and they're in different colors. So they represent the diversity that we are as a people, the nature of the nation that we belong to. But importantly, they connect with the Hermat mission and vision, which speak about the role of human resource management in national development. So those figures point upward, which really is a very developmental thing. The colors are chosen deliberately. The green speaks, of course, to that dimension of human resource management, which is about growth and people becoming better, freshness, that is about what human resource management is. But the blue speaks to a side of HR management that is not often considered. And it's a more clinical, scientific, dimension of HR, saying that we have to be data-driven, we have to be analytical, we have to be specific about things that are part of the HR thing. It's not just about the growth and development. We have to base this on science, on fact, and on order.
In November 2012, Hermat launched HR Matters, the first HR magazine of the Caribbean. It was a gala event. We did it in the actual end-of-year cocktail reception, and a lot of the founding members were there. It helped the members to have a place to showcase their talents and give contemporary HR advice to anyone who is willing to pick it up and read it. We had 5 publications within my tenure. During 2012 to 2018, Hermat had 3 world-class conferences. We had keynote speakers such as Dave Ulrich, Robert Kaplan, and Jennifer McClure. These conferences actually boasted of around 300 actual attendees per conference, and it would have been the most profitable conferences that Hermat ever held in its history. In 2014, SHRM was seeking to launch their own certification, which is the SHRM Senior Certified Professional and SHRM Certified Professional Certificates, and they partnered with Hermat to do the pilot exam, the very first exam for that certification in Trinidad and Tobago. It was held in November 2014, and Hermat would have collaborated thereafter with SHRM to ensure that a proctor center was sourced to allow students to do the exams in Trinidad once it came on stream.
A year ago, when this board sat to discuss strategy, we decided that the focus will be on people, and people will be the heart and center of our strategy. That being said, a number of initiatives were discussed and approved by the board that took life. And you've seen it, and it's been reflected over the past year in terms of some of the initiatives Hermat has led. That being the case, it brings us now to the culmination of our first year in office, which is to celebrate HR and HR excellence. So we've come up with the concept of the HR Legacy Award to celebrate you, all our practitioners across this country, all who have been doing the hard work over the last year and counting, because we are 3 years into the pandemic, but doing the hard lifting for our organizations, leading the way. And it's about time you are recognized for those efforts. That being said, we have several categories that you can nominate any practitioner you believe is doing excellent work. All these awards are named after our founders, centered on the legacy that they created for us. They started this organization, and we intend to take it forward and chart the course for the next generation of board members and leaders coming out of Hermat. Nominations are now open. Feel free to nominate a practitioner today. Follow us on all our social media platforms for further information and details. And we look forward to welcoming you as we celebrate our industry on November 27th, right here at the Hyatt. We look forward to having and hosting you at Hermat's Legacy Awards.
And so the Legacy Awards will recognize 7 categories of excellence. We have the Maxine Barnett Award for HR Excellence, the Glenn Wilson Award for Industrial Relations Excellence, the Gordon Draper Award for Transformation in Public Service, the Lisa James Award for Learning and Development, the Corinne Jones Award for Best Place to Work, the Anthony Watkins Award for Advocacy, and the Hermat Award for Outstanding Volunteerism. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a wonderful legacy. We now invite you to be part of building a legend. It takes a village, and as we've heard from the panelists, ecosystems to build the nation. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I know that I stand between you and lunch, so I will make this as brief as possible, but it is my task this morning, to offer a vote of thanks. It has been said that gratitude is the most exquisite form of courtesy, and indeed, as is our custom with all events of this nature, we must give thanks to those who made it possible. Firstly, on behalf of Hermat and our board, I would like to thank our 2 ministers who shared their perspectives on the public policy as it relates to going global. The Honourable Dr. Amory Brown talked about carrying our brand into the world and some of the characteristics that are required of commercial diplomats, which we know in HR, we have to be diplomats on a daily basis. So I think a lot of his message really resonates with the HR professionals in the room. And then the Honourable Paula Gopi-Schoon talked about the tremendous burden that is placed on HR managers, particularly through the pandemic and going forward, and the importance of investing in people, the number of different opportunities available for training and partnership, as well as, and something that's very important to us, putting a spotlight on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which now, as you know, is DEIB, because there is now the belonging component of that whole journey. I then have to thank our panel. That was such an amazing conversation. I really feel like we could have been here for a couple more hours, but I know they're all very busy. We have to lock the doors next time, so they can't leave until we truly finish with them. So, Dr. Driver, Franca, Elson, Lisa Marie, Roger, Andrea, Jerome, thank you all so much for that amazing conversation about we're good enough to be on the world stage. We have to focus on, as HR professionals, our ethics, our code of conduct. Dr. Driver spoke about the importance of health and safety. I love the idea of having a global mindset. So even though we are HR practitioners and we're HR managers for firms, we have to be part of that journey to take our firms globally. So we have a responsibility as HR practitioners to prepare our people to fulfill the mission of our firms. And so that was really addressed by our panel in terms of enabling and accelerating the development of our people, the importance of collaboration. You all know the saying that, rising sea lifts all boats. So Franca spoke to that. When one does well, we can all do well. We can go forward together. So that collaboration is so critical for us as HR practitioners. We learned about treating talent as carefully as we treat capital, and the importance of being brave and networking and going out there and being brilliant. So thank you again to our fantastic panel. I'm sure we'll have you back in the future to speak to our various Hermat events. I do have to thank all of our sponsors and partners. They are many, and we are very grateful to them for their ongoing support. They are HealthNet, PSCU, Caribbean Airlines, Label House Group, Guardian Media, Global Financial, Associated Brands, eTech, Guardian Group, Kenson Technologies, Loop TT, CCN, WESN, TTT, all of our media partners, Bermudez, Lucent Research, Methanex and Hyatt, and some of whom sponsored our UE students who are here today. It's so wonderful to have young people in the room. And you are still young, Dax, no matter what anybody says. We want to thank everybody who made today possible. I want to remind everybody in this room who is an HR practitioner, if you're not a member of Hermat already, we ring the shame bell. You have to join HERMAT. The only way our association, our industry can get better is if we all get involved. You know, this cannot be done by 5 of us or 6 of us. So join HERMAT, get on a committee. I've already roped 2 people in today for our Legacy Awards committee. So please step up and step forward to support your association, to support your industry. Of course, purchase tickets for our Legacy Awards. You all received a Who's Who magazine today, and it says on the magazine, on the very front cover, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And you can only be known by being networked and getting out there and talking about HR and being part of the HR conversations and, of course, attending events like this. So to all our attendees, thank you for spending the morning with us. Please continue to support HERMAT. Please continue to participate in our events, buy tickets for our Legacy Awards. I think that's everybody. Have I forgotten anyone, Madam President? Because I know I'll get in trouble. I'll get a WhatsApp immediately if I have forgotten anyone. Of course, the members of the board and our tireless, fearless leader who WhatsApps you at 3 a.m. to remind you that you have to bring something for the C-Suites event. Thank you, Cavell, for your leadership. We appreciate you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Laura. And on that note, I officially bring to a close today's proceedings. I want to urge you, of course, please pay attention to all HERMAT's external communications. We're on all the social media platforms. You'll realize that we post and we send out information about a lot of things, very informative things, things that are in the national landscape. Look out for all our events coming up. Pay attention to our newspaper article, our weekly newspaper article. We also have a radio show. You can feel free to listen to that and feel free to drop in your comments. If you want to, on the part of the newspaper article, if you're a HERMAT member and you feel you can write an article, please feel free to do so and continue to engage us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure, and on behalf of the Board of Directors and its committees of HERMAT, I would like to say thank you very much. Get home or get back to your workplaces safely. Thank you.